news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, July 29th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 16 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 15. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley.
The Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games.
And here's what's happened so far for Canadian athletes today at the Summer Games.
Canada is now in the double digits in Olympic medals in Tokyo, following a medal in rowing this morning. Victoria's Kaylee Filmer and Hilary Janssens of Surrey, BC, won bronze in the women's pair. Canadian judoka Shady Al Nahas fell just short of winning a medal in the men's 100-kilogram division. Al Nahas lost to Portugal's Jorge Fonseca by Wazi Ari in the bronze medal match. The 23-year-old finished his first Olympics in fifth place. In golf, Canada's Corey Connors and Mackenzie Hughes are at 2 under 69 after round 1 of the men's golf tournament. Connors and Hughes are tied for 20th with 9 other golfers, 6 strokes behind leader Sepp Straka of Austria. Play was suspended for 2.5 hours due to a thunderstorm. From the Canadian Press, I'm Karen Rebo.
City News Time 9:01. A 32-year-old Carleton Place man died in a single vehicle crash on Highway 7 this morning. It was just minutes after 5. OPP called to the highway eastbound around Hazeldean. A car had left the road, rolled, crossed the center median, coming to rest in the westbound lanes. The 32-year-old was ejected from that vehicle and pronounced dead at the scene. OPP advises westbound lanes are going to be closed for several hours today, along with one eastbound lane. Detours are set up. You can expect delays if you travel Highway 7 in that area. City News Time, 9:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll get into periods of light rain, especially through the latter part of the morning into the afternoon, and that light rain will continue into the evening, and then thunderstorms possible overnight. It is on the cool side today, 20 for the high, 11 for the low, and just 19 for the high tomorrow with sun and cloud. For today, the high, 20.
And right now in Ottawa, 16 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 15. Canada's blood supply once again under strain as people resume their more normal activities and hospitals start trying to catch up on their backlogged surgeries. Demand is increasing as several provinces lift restrictions related to COVID-19. Tracy Smith from Canadian Blood Services says the agency has extended its hours at some donation centres and mobile clinics in anticipation of an increased need, and a long weekend is approaching. Many pandemic safety precautions do remain in place, including a limit on the number of donors allowed inside Canada Blood Services at any one time. Drug maker AstraZeneca is looking for American authorization for its COVID-19 vaccine in the second half of this year.
The new timetable comes after the Anglo-Swedish drug maker had initially suggested in April that it would submit the application within weeks. The new announcement comes as the company released second quarter financial results. The report showed that the drug maker delivered more than 700 million doses of the vaccine to over 170 countries in the first half of this year. That includes 80 million doses that went to the COVAX initiative for low and middle income countries. The UK, European Union and World Health Organization have already authorized use of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Karen Chamas, London.
City News Time, 9:03. A tsunami warning had to be issued for parts of Alaska and Hawaii after a large earthquake struck the peninsula last night. The U.S. Geological Survey says the quake magnitude was 8.2. National Tsunami Warning Center says the trembler generated a wave that was less than 30 centimeters high, though. The tsunami warning was later canceled in Hawaii. Emergency Info British Columbia says they issued no tsunami warning there. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's got the news and the views.
He's got views on the news.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thursday, not quite Friday. If it was Friday, I'd put in my 3 hours and then be off for another 2 weeks. So Friday is taking its sweet time getting here. But that's not all bad because it means I get to spend more time with you. And good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. We're so glad you decided to give us part of your morning. Going to cover a lot of ground between now and noon. Randall Denley back on our program this morning, back together again. He's an Ottawa author and post-media columnist. He writes about municipal affairs for the Ottawa Citizen, covers the Ford government for the National Post. And this week in the local paper, his column was about a topic that we talked a lot about yesterday, the budget for the Ottawa Police Service and what should happen with that budget for the Ottawa Police. Like I said yesterday, it's a big number. It's $370 million, and it's a number that goes up every year. Without fail, it goes up every single year. And I told you yesterday, the police budget in this city is, it's up about 200% just since amalgamation. And a lot of people think it should either be frozen or maybe it should be cut. Defund the police. This idea, defund the police. So we're going to get right back into that issue again this morning because, policing is a core city service. It's the second most expensive city service to deliver behind only public transit. And the Ottawa Police is under scrutiny more than ever before. Randall Denley on the police budget coming right up. Every Thursday, we're joined by a pair of my good friends and my fellow political junkies, Andrew Brander and Lindsay Maskell. Andrew's a conservative, Lindsay is a liberal. And we talk about all the big things happening in Ontario politics this week, and that's why we call that segment, funny enough, Ontario Politics This Week. And there is a lot going on, right? There are rumors there could be a back-to-school plan from the Ford government. The premier says that's coming sometime next week. Maybe he'll drive the school bus. He says he'll drive the school bus himself if that's what it takes to get kids back in class. Hey, maybe the education minister, Stephen Lecce, maybe he could do double duty as a crossing guard. Get our money's worth. We'll get into what our political analysts think will be part of the back-to-school plan, what needs to be part of the back-to-school plan. In addition to that, the vaccine passport controversy is alive and kicking. I thought that would have abated by now, but it has not in the least. There's a story in the Toronto Star this morning. Doug Ford's arch enemy, the Toronto Star. And the narrative is the Ford government is passing the buck. Okay, that's what it's doing. It's passing the buck by washing its hands of all responsibility of coming up with any kind of rules or regulations about proof of vaccination and leaving it up to individual businesses to sort it all out. And it's the business owners who have to make up the rules on the fly, and it's the business owners who then have to face the wrath when customers complain. We'll get into that as well. Maybe mix in a little federal politics. Why not, right? With an election call, a federal election call expected in just a few weeks' time, triggered by Mr. Trudeau's insatiable desire for another majority government. I'm going to talk about some of the Ontario candidates and some of the Ontario ridings to watch, all during Ontario Politics This Week. That's coming up right after the 9:30 news. Oh, David, it's a heck of a list today, my friend. Yes, it is. I've been doing this on a fairly regular basis. Where the federal Liberals are today campaigning with your money, with the giant novelty checks, okay? It's another long list today of pre-election handouts. Yesterday, it was $5 billion. Okay, Premier Fury, you sign on to my $10 a day child care program. Here's $5 billion for your Muskrat Falls Hydro project, which is wildly over budget and years behind schedule. Gosh, and it's still, if only Newfoundland had someone to sell the electricity to once it's all said and done. They are doing this project called the Atlantic Loop, and that's a good plan, okay? But it's not going to provide any return on investment for a project the size of Muskrat Falls. The big problem is you have this uncooperative place called Quebec, where they have a firm called Hydro-Quebec. And Hydro-Quebec has never been in the mood to let Newfoundland sell its clean electricity to provinces west of Quebec, because Newfoundland Electricity is not going to use Hydro-Quebec's wires. No way, no how. But maybe if Quebec was more cooperative, maybe that hydro project in Newfoundland wouldn't need a $5 billion bailout from the federal government. $5 billion. Think about this, David. $5 billion to try and win 7 seats in Newfoundland. All right? So it's only $715 million a seat.
Talk about return on investment.
It's all in a day's work, though, for Mr. Trudeau. He is not on the road today. Mercifully. But his MPs are all over the place. MPs like Jenica Atwin, MP for Fredericton. She will make an announcement regarding support for the Fredericton International Airport. Now, isn't that something? Jenica Atwin, who was once a no-name Green MP, now a no-name Liberal MP. Remember, she crossed the floor because she hates Israel, and she found a home in the Liberal Party. And now she gets to announce election goodies, something you can't do when you're a Green MP, but you can do it as a Liberal. Dominic LeBlanc, Minister, Intergovernmental Affairs, will make an announcement today on recreation infrastructure at a soccer field in Dieppe, New Brunswick. How glamorous. Philomena Tassi, Minister of Labor, will announce funding to help certify skilled tradespeople. That is happening in Ottawa today. Lakefield, Ontario, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland will make an announcement and hold a media availability. Lakefield, Ontario, had to look it up. Thank you, Google, just north of Peterborough. At noon, Catherine McKenna back in action. An announcement in Toronto. Port Coquitlam. MP Rod McKinnon will make an announcement to, and tell me if you see a trend here, make an announcement to support electric vehicle infrastructure. Han Dong, MP, Don Valley North, an announcement to support electric vehicle infrastructure. Nate Erskine-Smith, MP, Beaches, East York, an announcement to support clean energy technologies in the transportation sector. Francis Scarpalegia, MP, Lac St. Louis, an announcement to support green transportation. And Ryan Turnbull, MP, Whitby, an announcement to support electric vehicle awareness. Just in case you're unaware that there are electric vehicles, the government will make an announcement today about their awareness, supporting their awareness. What are you doing, Mr. Turnbull, today? I am supporting electric vehicle awareness. Vote Liberal. Please be aware there are electric vehicles. 11 more pre-election giveaway goodies today. It reminds me of Oprah, like this. It's like the green Oprah. And you get an electric car, and you get an electric car, and you get an electric car, and everybody gets an electric car. The election can't come soon enough. You know, at least when these liberals make these goofy announcements, the liberals will have to spend a little bit of the party's money instead of partying with the taxpayers' money. And you get an electric car. Every morning on the Rob Snow Show between 10 and 11 o'clock, we do the Talk Back Hour. It's an hour of phone calls, an hour of opinions, your opinions. Sometimes I've been known to offer a few of my own opinions. It's 750-1310 after the 10 o'clock news. And on Thursday, over the last few weeks, we've been doing this thing called 3 election questions. I have 3 more questions today. I have been really enjoying the conversation. We've talked about the CERB and the basic income guarantee, climate change and pipelines, decriminalizing illegal drugs, taxing the rich, buying new fighter jets. We've talked about it all, and today we're going to talk some more. 3 election questions. questions about issues that might come up during the election campaign. So I want you to give these questions some thought and give me a call during the talkback hour. 3 election questions. Question number 1. Should the federal government try to balance the budget in the next 5 years? Not in 10 years. Not in 50 years. How about 5 years? What do you think about that as an idea? Question number 2. Should the next federal government raise, hike, jack up what was once the most hated tax in Canada before carbon taxes? The GST, the goods and services tax. Should it be hiked back up to its original 7% to help balance the budget? It's 5% now. The GST is 5% now. Should it go back to 7%? And question number 3. Should the next federal government end supply management for agriculture? End the quota system for milk and eggs and poultry in the name of cheaper groceries? And for those who don't know what supply management is, we'll spend some time explaining it this morning. And who knows, we might get a few calls from the farm barns of Eastern Ontario. Those are today's 3 election questions. I can't wait to hear your answers this morning on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
It's such a beautiful field because it's all natural. I'm able to talk to a lot of people who are going through different journeys of health where they really don't know where to start, where to begin. And I'm happy and grateful to have all this knowledge where I can actually help them and guide them. So, of course, medications have a great place in our system, but even so do natural therapies, which have been around for centuries and centuries. Like, old time, ancient times, everything, herbs grew, everything was done with nature, all healing was done with nature. So I'm totally in love with all the elements with nature. In our beautiful village of Manatik, the Manatik Natural Market, you can find tremendous different things. So we have herbs, we have vitamins, we have natural body care, we do infrared sauna therapy, nutrition counseling, acupuncture, Bowen therapy, energy healing. So we're like a wellness hub along with being a full health food store. We are 1 year into pandemic since it started last year in March. It was a shock. Usually I see things coming, and I definitely did not see that coming. Golden Root is a product that I created 4 years ago, actually for my kids, just for immune system, overall health. And it just took off with certain friends of mine who had cancer or some severe issues, and they started finding that it was really helping them from different tests they had done with their doctor. And I knew I had something really special. So then I went through the proper procedure of being able to sell it. So it's actually, I'm not allowed to make it anymore in my house 4 years ago, and it is made in a Health Canada approved lab, and then it comes to me. And what Golden Root is a formulation of turmeric, ginger, lavender, oregano, and black pepper, all food grade, which is the most bioavailable turmeric in the market right now for pain, inflammation, digestion, immune system, concussion, liver health, and brain health. So, and it tastes like salad dressing. We do a lot of in-house, so we make our in-house concoctions of teas. You can come here, tell us what your health issues are, and we can blend it right there. And there's some that are already prepared beforehand for sleeping, for anxiety, for different things. And in that bar, we basically make cold brew teas and cold brew nitrogen coffee. And again, it's all local. Everything we do is local, and as many herbs we can find locally as well. If a client can't come out, we'll go out of our way to deliver it. And you're getting that personal touch when you come in. If you have an issue, we will listen and help you. We're very, very active in the community, so we would like the same thing back for the community to come to.
Voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Saying good morning to author and post-media columnist Randall Denley. Good morning, Randall. Welcome back.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you. What should happen with the budget for the Ottawa Police Service?
Well, this should be pretty easy, I would think. Council's already said, hey, 3% guideline. If you're on the Police Services Board, you should say, okay, so we got 3% to play with. What's the smartest way to spend it? Instead, the Police Service Board members are getting sucked into this whole defund the police thing. Like, well, that's a serious thing. We really got to think about that. So let's ask the police to give us a look at, what it would mean. 3%, okay, but well, how about 1.5? All right, and a freeze. How about a freeze? What would that look like? And they gave them a sort of a quick view of that at their meeting this week. A freeze would mean, something like 140 fewer officers in Ottawa. How does that solve any problem that the Ottawa police have in real life? The thing that seems to be driving them, though, Rob, is that some councillors believe that defunding the police would make the world better, and certainly some people in the community believe it as well. So they come and make presentations at the Police Services Board, and then Diane Deans, who chairs it, has been around for a long time, should know better. But it's very confusing, because some people say defund them, and other people say no. So it's a difficult decision to know what to do. I mean, it really isn't difficult unless somehow, as a member of the Police Services Board, you've thought yourself to a position saying, the problem in Ottawa is we just have too many police. And I looked at some of those numbers in my column, and Ottawa has been historically quite cheap when it comes to spending money.
Lean. Yeah.
Yeah, lean. That would be a very nice way to put it. And we have the second largest number of people per police officer of the 12 major police services. We've got the second lowest spending as a percentage of the municipal budget of the 12 biggest police services. So we have a police service now that's, it's easy to argue, is undersized for the city that they're trying to police. So why anyone would spend, more than 30 seconds thinking about, maybe we should make them smaller. Let's have fewer still. Maybe that would be good. And it's not that the police don't have problems, Rob. We've had some very problematic officers who aren't honest, according to the allegations against them, raises issues about hiring. There's been a long-running sexual harassment issue. I think management's been weak for quite a while at the police service. These are real problems that the Police Service Board is in a position to try to address.
Yes.
And this proposed budget tries to address at least some of it. So why wouldn't you say yes, but here's the progress we expect from you, Chief Slowly, and we're going to monitor it carefully. That's their job. But to get sucked into a purely ideological argument about defunding the police is way off base, I think, for a Police Services Board. And if council feels that that's the way to go, then council should say, we're persuaded by that. We're going to give you no increase next year, so go figure it out. Even then, you'd expect the Police Service Board to be the ones to come back to council and say, well, guys, we know how policing works, and that is not a good idea. We're not going along. You would not expect the Police Services Board to be the one who kind of leads the fight. I don't think they'll do it in the end.
Right.
But it's such a simplistic idea, Rob, that, we've identified some bad interactions between police and racialized people and people with mental health issues. Solution? Fewer police, fewer interactions. It's so simple. It doesn't get at the essence of what the problem is.
It's kind of like one or the other approach, as though it has to be one or the other, right? So
yes.
When I look through the police services budget, I don't see a document that's filled with all kinds of frivolous spending. I really don't. I mean, as you point out in your column, the human resources side takes up most of the budget. I thought it was about 70%. You say it's about 80% in your column.
80%. It's salaries and benefits. So
right. And we know that when it comes to contracts, if it goes to arbitration, that never goes the city's way. They usually go with, well, who's making the most, right? Okay, that's what we're going to give you.
Police Services Board here because they didn't go to arbitration. They agreed to a contract that was over what other forces were getting. So why does it cost so much? That's part of it.
Yeah. But there's a lot of growth in the city, too.
Maybe.
Yeah, sorry, Randall. There's a lot of growth in the city, too. And it's clear when you go through the budget document, they're trying to address, especially the tremendous growth south of the airport and a lot of those fast-growing communities. They need police vehicles. They need police IT infrastructure, information management. They need police officers. They need police stations. I mean...
How do you say no to those people?
Right. They're paying big bucks in property tax, right?
I would say any councillor who thinks we have too many police should just say, oh, I'm going to be the first to say, cut policing in my ward. Stop responding to calls. So, see, I'm going to help solve the problem by, we'll just ignore the demand. When people phone the police, they expect them to respond in some way. And if you don't have enough people, that expectation won't be met. But there's been a lot of feedback in the last couple of years to council that people in neighborhoods say, what happened to neighborhood policing? There's nobody here anymore who understands what's happening in our part of the city. So the police service is responding to that by bringing back neighborhood policing. But it's a labor-intensive activity, so we're going to get rid of that again and just have people drive around in cars. The whole thing is just ridiculously retrograde, and I don't know why they're giving it any serious consideration.
Okay, do you think it's just a dog and pony show, and at the end of it, they'll come back with it'll be 3%, and
Well, they probably will, but why waste time and energy going through all the hoops? And the thing that worries me a little bit is when you offer what about 1.5%? How about that? You're still reducing a lot of officers, but people have a tendency to drift towards the middle ground. Well, it's a compromise. We didn't freeze it, but we took less money. We just told the chief to do more with less. Famous thing that people in management have been doing for decades: do more with less. Not sure that's ever really worked anytime, anywhere, but we know it won't work in policing. So it's just frustrating that we're being distracted from what I think are significant issues with the quality of the work done by Ottawa Police Service, and instead we're focusing on the quantity of work. There's too much work, too many police. I mean, some people believe that, the police are the bad guys, right? And the fewer of them, the better. I don't think that's what most people believe. And council isn't there to cater to a small ideological minority who hold that view. And listen to them, hear what they have to say, great. But I don't think it should be acted on.
Okay. Thank you, Randall Denley. Good to hear from you this morning.
Okay, Rob. Thanks a lot.
Author and post-media columnist Randall Denley. Right after the news, Ontario politics this week. This is City News.
1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, July 29th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, raining and 16 degrees in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news this hour. A 32-year-old Carleton Place man died in a single vehicle crash on Highway 7 this morning. Just minutes after 5, the OPP called to the highway eastbound around the Hazeldean area. A car had left the road, rolled, crossed the center median, coming to rest in the westbound lanes. A 32-year-old man from Carleton Place ejected from the vehicle and pronounced dead at the scene. Canada has its first rowing medal at the Tokyo Olympics, winning bronze in women's pairs. They crossed the finish line behind New Zealand and Russia. That earned Canadian athletes 10 medals so far in the Games. All of those medals awarded so far to female athletes. Provinces likely keeping an eye on Alberta. That province scrapping isolation requirements for close contacts of positive COVID-19 cases. Daily case counts in that province continue to rise. Starting today, contact tracers will no longer notify close contacts of a positive case. It comes as Alberta recorded the highest daily increase since early June, but a couple of weeks before the province scraps things like mandatory isolation for people who test positive. City News Time, 9:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's time for Ontario Politics This Week with Lindsay, Maskell, Liberal strategist, former advisor to Premier McGuinty. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning.
Nice to hear from you. Andrew Brander's back with us, senior consultant, Crestview, former advisor to the Ford government. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Rob.
I hope everybody's well.
Excellent.
Good.
Don't we all love Olympic season?
I'm trying to get into it, but I'm really not. I'm not all wrapped up in it. Maybe it's because I'm working, but I'm not sure. What about you, Andrew? Are you into the Olympics?
Yeah, and
you are.
And I
okay,
appreciate,
good.
I appreciate the time zone difference too.
Okay,
so it's something nice to watch in the evening.
I will. I'll live vicariously through the two of you. How about that? Okay. All right. Now let's get into Ontario politics this week. There are rumors of a back-to-school plan in the works. Probably going to be released next week, according to Premier Ford. Andrew, what do you expect to be in the plan?
I long anticipated, that's for sure. I think the government had probably intended to release something a little bit sooner. And then, of course, the shuffle came and the changes came. So, schools have always been, and we've discussed this many times on this show, has always been the red line for the government. There's been a lot of skepticism around a lot of the decisions that have been made by this government in terms of what they decided to keep open and close. And while a lot of that's warranted, I do believe that the government has truly and genuinely wanted to keep schools open whenever possible. It was a crushing personal defeat for the Premier and the Minister of Education not to be able to open them in the spring. So I think what we're going to see is an announcement that's backed up with contingency plans, increased investments in PPE testing, ventilation systems, and I also think they're going to likely give a bit more independence and authority again to school boards and PHUs to make those decisions locally. Remember when we went back to this sort of phased approach, the province went back to a province-wide opening.
Right.
And I think the province is going to want to ensure that if there comes a time that they need to start putting lockdowns in place again, the impact of that is regional, more manageable, and quite frankly, at the decision of someone else that isn't the premier.
Right. So if there's a problem in the Peel board, some schools in the Peel board, we let the Peel health officials and the Peel school board officials deal with that, and it doesn't affect people here in Eastern Ontario, for example, right? If things are going well here in Eastern Ontario, for example, something like that. Okay, a little local flexibility. What do you expect to be in the plan, the back-to-school plan, Lindsay Maskell?
Well, it will be interesting to compare it to the plan that the Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca released over a month ago, the same day the NDP put out attack ads on him. So we do have a really good roadmap that they know that teachers and unions supported. So it isn't like they don't have a cheat sheet to work from. But the concern is things we should hear, like ventilation systems. Keep in mind, if you have a child that is of age to be vaccinated, if they didn't get their first shot by yesterday, they're not actually going to be considered fully vaccinated by the time they go back to school. So this does become our most vulnerable community that affects all of us, of unvaccinated people. So I think we need to see about ventilation systems, about class sizes and distancing, so space issues, and how that could be potentially maintained with the threat of a fourth wave. But I do think it is passing the buck. I agree with Andrew. They will do a bit of a pass the buck to school boards and local health officials.
Okay.
But I also think that will help in the sense that, if a school board is not having a problem and children can be together in class, they should be. It's essential. It's tough seeing how seeing people's kids now finally with reopening this summer, how they do seem to be so affected by this. I don't have an issue if they obviously do a regional system, and this would be the case to do it. And I actually think, it should have been part of our reopening plan.
I wonder how they're going to deal with the COVID-19 vaccination situation. We have childhood vaccinations that are mandatory. Like your child can't go to school unless they've been vaccinated against this list. With this list of immunizations, right? Mm-hmm. So for the 12 and up student, I wonder where the COVID-19 vaccine fits into that. Have we had any clarity on that? Does anybody know?
We haven't, in the sense that because it was only just announced yesterday, or I guess 2 days ago, that there was actually officially enough vaccine in the country for every person eligible to have 2 shots. But that would mean a parent would have, as I said, have to have had make sure that their kid had at a minimum, their first shot yesterday to be fully vaccinated for school. But I do think you raise a really interesting point, Robert, of course, which is that, if you want a U.S. work visa, you need immunizations. You just, if you're old enough, you used to have that little yellow card for school. And it wasn't a big deal. And I don't know if it's the term passport that has become antagonistic, or if people think that it's how it's tied to freedom, but we've always had this. And I think that they just have not had I don't think they've been able to put that in place, in the sense that we did not have a full vaccination plan for kids that we could guarantee them to be fully vaccinated by the time school returned.
Go ahead. Yes, Andrew.
I think this one's a little bit different only because it evolves, right? And so unlike the list of 9 mandatory vaccinations that are required, they cover all the basics. Those are ones that don't require constant boosters and constant, evolution in terms of adapting to the virus as it changes. So I do think it becomes a little bit more complex. Not saying that's something that the province should or should not consider. I just say the complications associated with that. It's not as simple as the other vaccinations that are included in that mandatory set.
Okay. Just remind me, I should know the answer to this. When it comes to Mr. Lecce, has he been the education minister from the get-go for this government since it came to power? Or was there...
No. Who was he was brought in after about a year.
Who was education minister before him, do you remember?
Minister Thompson. Mm-hmm. is it?
Thompson. Okay.
Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so
okay.
he was
right.
not in first cabinet. He was not in, and then was brought in because of obviously, the upcoming teacher negotiations. They thought that strong communication background with having done communications for Stephen Harper, so he was promoted into cabinet. I think it probably was about 4 months before the pandemic. Late.
But he's I mean, Lindsay, going back to your time in government, I mean, it's never easy when it comes to the teachers' unions.
No, we had
You had your own problems with the teachers' unions.
Struggle, and it's interesting in the sense that sometimes, unfortunately, you pick that fight, right? And that we said, I just think it's an important thing to say. I think our time with it was that we had to show that we were holding the line with the teachers, who everybody believed we were so close with. And
well, you were. But then Mr. McGuinty, after the Drummond report came out, did draw a line in the sand on banking sick days, and then there was a war over banking sick days, and after Mr. McGuinty took his own walk in it wasn't snowing then, but his walk in the leaves, I guess. Kathleen Wynne basically said, "What Dalton McGuinty took away, I will give you back," and then some. Anyway, all history. Let's move along. Vaccine passports. What do you think, Andrew? Is the Ford government passing the buck here, basically downloading proof of vaccination onto individual businesses? Should it be coming up with a set of rules and regulations? What do you think?
So just I think nuance is important here to clarify. Right. Just because when we say vaccine passport, I think we're talking about the certification for sort of international travel, but I think the question
right, let's call
around
it proof of vaccination then.
Yeah, is more on the provincial side of things. And I think when we talk about credentials, I think the province still has an opportunity to move on this if they want to. We recall in last fall, there was about a day's worth of stories when Minister Elliott floated the idea, sort of trial balloon of, the idea of needing to show some kind of receipt when going to movies or going to malls or what have you. I actually wouldn't be surprised at all if the province, by that point, when she had floated that idea, had already gone through some sort of procurement, tested a technology that integrates with all those vaccine receipts we've been seeing people post on their social media and receive, of course, when they get their vaccination. So I do think that this is a question of conviction and core values. I would almost be safe in saying and suggesting that the province probably has something that they can turn on very, very quickly and do so, but they need to do it if they do. As much more of a carrot than a stick.
Okay.
And I think that given where we are in this pandemic and the reopening, we've given up a lot of the carrots. The Jay's home opener is coming up.
Yes, that's right.
Wouldn't that be something that would encourage people who were maybe huge Jays fans who hadn't really gotten the time to, found the time to go get vaccinated, to go do it if they needed that in order to enter. I would also say if some real true, I think the choice should be on businesses to enforce this thing, and really I think it's a domino effect. Once one really true Canadian company, embraces this, let's say a Tim Hortons, if they said, if you want to come sit in our restaurant, you need to show proof. Otherwise, you can use the drive-through or something. I think you'd see a lot of other companies sort of follow suit. But it would take leadership on the part of the companies to do so.
What do you think, Lindsay?
Well, I do think about it as not regarded like relation to travel, just about the services we use.
Right.
And, the one nice thing is that actually our uptake is so high, right? This isn't, I don't know that we're now at the point where this needs to be about carrot or stick. The outliers are going to be who they are. And then really, I saw it the other day. It's just amazing how they're taking this direct to neighborhoods, because it's not that they're hesitant about groups that are hesitant as much as it is about convenience, access, ease to get to a clinic. So in a major city, they're now moving things more regionally and taking those big clinics and dismantling them, taking them out to communities and getting great results. So, when obviously I think the polling showed more than 80% of people were supporting a passport system of some sort, this is now about, it becomes down to a little bit about choice, and the province helping, it would be a big help for businesses if the province did show some leadership on this. Particularly, it's not about everywhere. It's that choice of obviously children under 12 can't be vaccinated.
Right.
You choose whether you go to those places or not. But there are some places and some businesses where you would want to know, like, for example, a gym class, a gym studio. I would want to know if I'm working out with other vaccinated people or if I'm not. So there are certain places where this would be like especially valuable. And what we know of those closed, more contained spaces, and some of this just isn't going to be capable of, we're not going to be able, we can't tell people you can't bring your child to do an errand in a mall. But the province could have a point to show some leadership here. And, if we really think about this on a political level, the majority of people are vaccinated. Like, it should be easy to be on the side of the people who, want to support this. Right. And the outliers are a few, or people.
And they're on the outside looking in. Let me ask you, I mentioned earlier in the week that last week, when I was away, we were in a few restaurants. We were in quite a few shops. Never got asked. It's not like anybody asked us. They didn't even ask us. Okay. Have you been asked? Like, if you've been to a restaurant in your neighborhoods, is anybody, like a host or a...
I am still just doing patios, so I have limited outdoor dining.
Okay,
but if you live in a condo, and I don't know if this is Andrew's experience, but it is like the new elevator greeting. May I come in? I'm vaccinated. It's not a business arrangement, but it is elevator sharing politeness.
Okay, all right.
And I have been asked I was asked at my nail salon, which I appreciated.
Okay. Andrew? Anything like that?
It has not been my experience in any of the restaurants or shops that I've been in where they've asked specifically about vaccination status. Of course, they continue to strictly enforce the measures, the contact tracing. Lindsay's absolutely right. My experience has very much been that people are pretty conscious about it when sharing elevators, especially in a 40-story building with elevators that constantly go down. There have sometimes been very rare exceptions where more than 3 people need to be in the elevator at one time because it's just unmanageable if not. And so in those cases people are very polite. Everyone seems very conscious about the rules.
Okay, we'll be right back. We'll talk about some of the Green Party's problems and whether that could actually present an opportunity for one Ontario MPP, and federal election call expected to be just weeks away. Who are some notable Ontario candidates to watch? I have a few that I'm interested in. I'll ask our panelists this morning. This is the Rob Snow Show, Ontario Politics This Week on City News.
Part of the reason I got back into this is because I am creative, and I also wanted to kind of have a fun flair, 50s vibe. All of the boxes are kind of fun names, the colors are fun, the logo is fun, and it's not just the package that I want to bring joy to people's lives, it's also the feeling that they get when they receive it, to know that there's someone that thinks of them and they're missing them, and showing that they care when they can't be there. The smallest of the subscription boxes is the red box, the classical box. So you would get 5 to 7 items from the variety of categories. Those do change quarterly. However, with items that are more popular, we'll bring them back as people ask for them, or you could get them as an add-on option. And then those items will be included in the Jazzy box, the same items from the first, although they'll be in a larger size, more quantity, as well as a couple extra items. And then in the largest box, the Doo-Wop Deluxe, which is our most popular, that is a comprehensive offering of all of the other 2 boxes, plus additional. So for example, if you were to get a certain item in the smallest of the boxes, that item would still be offered in the large, but in a bigger size. So you're getting everything bigger, plus an extra few items. The first thing is I look for Canadian suppliers and manufacturers. That is something I'm very proud of. I make sure that the products are safe, that they fit into the packages that we offer, obviously. They have to be the proper size and weight. I have approximately 300 items that we have so far that we can order that basically help make people's lives easier. There's snacks, there's self-care items, there's entertainment, a little bit of everything. And basically I try it and test it, and if it's duly approved, then I include it in our packages. So some of the categories that we have is we offer treats, which is of course everyone likes treats, no matter how old you are. So we have things like nuts, chocolates, different types of snacks, maybe a handmade piece of jewelry. We also include pieces of jewelry as well, occasionally. We also have our pamper items. So your pamper items would include things like your bath soaks, your specialty lotions, things like that. 2 other categories we offer are leisure. Leisure would include things such as puzzles, adult coloring books, paint by numbers, crosswords, word find, Sudoku, if that's how you say it. And we also have items for self-care and health. So masks, sanitizers, sanitizing wipes. They're all natural, non-drying, made with natural ingredients. So they're very good for everyone, especially in this time that we're dealing with.
Fun
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Okay, Ontario politics this week. We're back with Lindsay Maskell and Andrew Brander. Lindsay's a Liberal. Andrew's not. Andrew is a Conservative. No, Green Party. It's in the paper today. Green Party has $300,000 in the bank. That's it. To fight a national election campaign. Like, good luck. I don't know what they're going to. I guess they're not going to have 2 election campaigns. They'll go to Hertz Rent-A-Car. I guess that's how they'll get around. But holy cow, that's not a lot of money for an election campaign. All of these Green Party problems, does this create an opportunity for the Guelph MP and the Ontario Green Party leader, Mike Schreiner? Andrew, what do you think?
Well, if they treat him anything like they've treated Anime Paul, I think he wants to stay exactly where he is.
Yeah, I like Guelph. I'm just
where he is right now.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, the Green Party's just had this odd approach to the leadership, and I can't quite figure it out. It's almost like it's a dynasty that people just kind of inherit. I remember Elizabeth May, months before the last federal election, publicly musing about the fact that she didn't even want to be leader. They went through this exciting leadership race, and then all this infighting. It's totally bizarre and really hard for me to comprehend. I think the fundamental problem here with the Green Party is, and this is why they have a ceiling, is that they simply don't want to grow. They want someone there to be a voice, an accountability measure, a thorn in the side of government, but I think that's it. And so I think Schreiner, to his part, is very comfortable where he is. There's not really a path to succession there. One thing I would say very quickly, Diane Sachs, former Ontario Environmental Commissioner, now the Deputy Leader of the Green Party in Ontario. If she has leadership ambitions, maybe that does push him federally.
All right, interesting. Lindsay, what do you think, Lindsay?
Well, yes, I would imagine our MPP in Guelph should stay exactly where he is and wish that it was the McGuinty era again when they were up over 7% in Ontario and were able to run a candidate everywhere. What's happening federally hurts them at the provincial level even, right?
Oh, really? Okay.
In terms of organization, fundraising, faith that it's a serious party that could be an option for them. So when they went from no seats to finally having a seat, electing a leader, doing really well in a couple of ridings, including my parents' home riding of Bruce Frail and Sound, similar those urban-rural split ridings, really good success there. They have what's happening federally really impacts them. It's a big credibility blow, fundraising blow, and it's not going to improve overnight. I mean, we're seeing it. So many ridings that the Green Party did quite well in 2019 that they do not have candidates yet. So the $300,000 in the bank and not having candidates in Toronto will be a big hit. And I imagine we're going to be talking about this for some time. I wonder if it even potentially impacts them inviting her to the debates. I think it's an interesting topic about the commissioner and the process for debates. If what has happened is actually going to keep her out of that conversation.
We only have 2 minutes left. Federal election call could be just weeks away. Who are some notable candidates to watch? I'll name two. Melissa Lantsman, Thornhill. I've had her on the program many times. I think she was on with you, in fact, several times, Lindsay. I just think she'd be a breath of fresh air for the Conservative Party. Michael Coteau is a Liberal. Don Valley East, he's an MPP right now. He's running for the federal Liberal nomination. I'm watching those two. Who are you watching? Give me a name. Andrew?
I think you're right, Melissa Lantsman and Adam Chambers in Simcoe North. These are candidates who represent Erin's sort of new wave of conservatism. Importantly, they're running for nominations against serious competitors, and they're winning them. I think that's an important signal from the grassroots, which shows a shift in the membership of the party. The other one, of course, I'm watching Leslyn Lewis.
Leslyn Lewis, yeah.
Former leadership candidate who did very well. She's going to be a respectful voice in Parliament.
Where's she running again? Where's she running?
Haldimand, Norfolk.
Oh, Haldimand, Norfolk. Yeah, okay.
Pretty safe.
Pretty safe there, yeah. Lindsay, who are you watching? Lindsay, give me a name.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yasser Naqvi is making a return to politics. Both of those are obviously in fairly safe seats for their respective parties. But by region, I think what's going on in that strip along the 401 west of Oakville, heading down Kitchener south, all the way down to Windsor is interesting. With Sandra Pupatello announcing the other day she's running again. So another attempt at.
She's going to run federally. She wants to.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay. Okay. Yeah, she finished runner-up to Kathleen Wynne in the Liberal leadership race. I remember, right? Yeah, interesting. She's more of a blue. She's traditionally known as a blue Liberal. I wonder how she'd fit in on Team Trudeau, but we'll see. Okay. Great stuff this week. Talk soon.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. Lindsay Maskell, Liberal strategist, former advisor to Premier McGuinty. Andrew Brander, senior consultant with Crestview, former advisor to the Ford government. I don't advise anybody. Nobody listens to me anyway. This is the Rob Snow Show. Talk Back Hour, 3 election questions. Hey, I know you're listening. I want you to answer my 3 election questions right after the news on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, July 29th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, raining and 16 degrees in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. A 32-year-old man from Carleton Place died in a single-vehicle crash this morning on Highway 7. Just after 5, the OPP called to the highway eastbound around Hazeldean. A car had left the road, rolled, crossed the center median, coming to rest in the westbound lanes. The 32-year-old man was apparently ejected from the vehicle and pronounced dead at the scene. OPP advises the westbound lanes are going to be closed for several hours, along with one eastbound lane. City News Time 10:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll get into periods of light rain, especially through the latter part of the morning into the afternoon, and that light rain will continue into the evening, and then thunderstorms possible overnight. It is on the cool side today, 20 for the high, 11 for the low, and just 19 for the high tomorrow with sun and cloud. For today, the high, 20.
And right now it's raining and 16 degrees in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. Canada won another bronze this morning, bringing the medal total for Canada at the Olympics to 10. Every medal won so far has been by a female athlete, the latest rowing bronze for the pairs. Men's golf competition is now underway. Round 1 in the books. Both of Canada's players, Corey Connors and Mackenzie Hughes, are at 2 under after shooting an opening round 69. Connors and Hughes are tied for 20th with 9 other golfers. Tight field. They are 6 strokes behind the leader from Austria. Play had to be suspended for 2.5 hours. That was due to a thunderstorm that rolled through. Ontario is now 1/3 of the way to fulfilling markers it set for a 4th step into reopening. Health Minister Christine Elliott says more than 80% of people in the province who are 12 and older have now received at least 1 dose of COVID vaccine. That meets the province's guideline. The other markers, 75% of people aged 12 and older have to have their 2nd dose, and no public health unit can have less than 70% of eligible people fully vaccinated. The province has said if the conditions are met, the majority of restrictions can be lifted as early as 21 days after entering this Phase 3. Distress Centre of Ottawa is reiterating the services it's offering as residents continue experiencing mental health issues primarily related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
Leslie Scott of the Distress Centre of Ottawa says those in need of help don't even need to call for assistance thanks to a text and chat feature on their website. Scott tells City News the most common demographics reaching out to the centre.
18 to 34-year-olds are our most popular that are calling. And then secondary from that is 35 to 60. So we are definitely seeing the younger population reaching out for help.
She adds the Distress Centre is also the first point of contact for many people in need, and that allows them to direct services such as a mobile crisis team to further assist. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News Time, 10:04. Second quarter economic results in the States strong, but not strong enough for some economists.
The U.S. economy grew in the second quarter at a rate of 6.5%, a strong pace and a sign the economy is shaking off the worst of the pandemic, but it wasn't as strong as the 8.4% economists had been expecting. And there are concerns the eruption of the Delta variant could curtail growth in the second half of the year. The economy has come far from its collapse in the second quarter of 2020, but parts of it, like the labor market, have struggled. Another 400,000 people filed new claims last week for unemployment benefits. Aaron Katursky, ABC News, New York.
I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
With this week's 3 election questions. I love this hour. Questions about issues that might come up during the next federal election campaign, okay? And I want to know your opinion on these issues. Okay, the election call is probably a little more than 2 weeks away. These issues could come up, okay? Question number 1 for this week for 3 election questions. Should the next federal government try to balance the federal budget in 5 years? Okay, not 10 years, Not by the year 2070. Which is what the PBO said. We're on track to have budget deficits until the year 2070. But do some serious lifting, heavy lifting, and get it done in 5 years. What do you think? Is that even possible? I'd like to know what you think about that. Question number 2. Should the next federal government, whoever that may be, whatever party that happens to be, should it raise the GST? The goods and services tax. Hike it. Sure, it wouldn't be politically popular, but maybe it would be the right thing to do. Jack it up to 7%. I leave it up to you. Okay, it's 5% now. You jack it up to 7%. Why? Well, to help balance the budget. See question number 1. And question number 3 for 3 election questions this morning. Should the next federal government end supply management for agriculture? The quota system. That leads to higher prices. It does. No question about it. But there are also issues about food security and supply chains in the food supply. Raises prices for milk, for eggs, for poultry, chicken and turkeys. None of the parties are promising to do that, but should they? Well, People's Party, probably. Maxime Bernier, Mad Max, he would probably like to see that. But I'd like to know what you think. 750-1310. Those are the 3 election questions for this week. 3 election questions. We started doing this a few weeks ago. It has prompted some great discussions. You know, it's just 3 questions that are likely to come up during the course of the federal election campaign. It's our plan to keep doing this until Election Day. Now, of course, we're working from the assumption that there's going to be a federal election, that it's going to be called in the middle of August, right when I get back from my vacation. It's perfect timing. And we'll be voting around the 3rd week of September, rumor has it. After this week, I'm away for a couple of weeks. I'll be back on August 16th, okay? It's a Monday. That's when I think the election is going to be called. I think it's actually going to be called that day. We'll probably have live coverage of it right here on the Rob Snow Show. There's Mr. Trudeau. There's the Governor General. They're calling the election right now. I didn't plan for it to work out that way. It just seems that that's the way it might work out. So thinking back to when we've done this before, we talked about a basic income guarantee. Not a lot of takers on that. We talked about an Energy East pipeline. A lot of takers on that. We talked about legalizing, or at the very least decriminalizing, all illegal drugs. Not a lot of takers for that. Debated the new need for fighter jets. Kind of iffy on that. Taxes on the rich. Not too many takers. $10 a day child care. We talked about it. And I have really enjoyed the debate. It's been wonderful. And that's why today I hope that I can get your take on 3 more issues with these 3 election questions. Okay? 750-1310. 750-1310. 613-750-1310. Talk back hour. It's your hour. You don't call. That means I talk. We have every line available right now. Should the government try to balance the budget in 5 years? Not 10 years. Not 50 years. 5 years. Yeah, tough decisions would have to be made, but is it impossible? Should the federal government raise the GST? Or would that be political suicide? Should the federal government raise the GST back up to 7% to help balance the budget? See question number 1. And question number 3, should the government end supply management for agriculture? And for those who don't know what that is, we will spend some time explaining it this morning for the uninitiated, for the city slickers. Okay. Today's 3 election questions. Balance the budget sooner than any of the parties are promising to balance the budget right now. To help in that effort, should the government raise the consumption tax, the sales tax, put it right back to where it used to be, 7%, and end supply management, the quota system in place for certain parts of the agri-economy? I would point out as well that not one of the major parties are promising to do that. It's a sacred dairy cow, supply management in Canadian politics. I mean, balancing the budget within 5 years. Sure, monumental task. Herculean. We're going to talk about it a little later with Don Drummond, the former chief economist at Toronto Dominion Bank. He's at Queen's University these days, also the C.D. Howe Institute. Also going to talk about the GST. Budget deficit is actually in the news today, in the National Post this morning, from reporter Jesse Snyder. Quote, the federal government could be running budget deficits until the year 2070 if current spending plans are not altered. According to estimates by the Parliamentary Budget Officer that have spurred warning calls over Canada's fiscal position. It goes on. According to the PBO's Fiscal Sustainability Report, reaching surplus could now... I mean, it's incredible, right? It'll be long gone, but David could be... You'll probably still be around. Could take until the year 2070. Up from 2023, just months before the pandemic struck. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland has declined to present a long-term plan to return to balance or cut spending, saying the government has instead been focused on ensuring federal stimulus dollars to help spur an economic recovery. So, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, that is the state of affairs right now. If we do nothing, or if we keep doing what we're doing, to put it another way, the federal government will be running massive budget deficits for the next 50 years. 50 years. The Liberals have no desire whatsoever to even offer a forecast, offer a decade as to when the budget would be balanced. You don't hear anything from the New Democrats on a balanced budget either. And if history is any guide, what will the New Democrats be doing? They will likely be outbidding the Liberals, promising to outspend the Liberals. And the best you can get from the Conservatives these days is we'll try and balance the budget in 10 years. So that's why my first question for you is, should the government accelerate that timeline? Cut that best case scenario in half and have the balance sheet of the federal government back in balance within 5 years? Or is that too ambitious? Is the hole simply too big? That's question number one. Also, raising the GST and ending supply management in agriculture. 750-1310, 750-1310. 3 election questions on the Rob Snow Show. Back with your answers after this on City News.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background that comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporate the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize, even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just to always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I would have sketchbooks and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
To talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
3 election questions, 3 questions about issues that might come up during the next federal election campaign. Should we balance the budget in 5 years? Should we raise the GST? And should we end supply-managed agriculture? Those are the 3 ones for today. Let's get to some calls here at 750-1310. Andrew, you're on City News. Good morning, Andrew.
So all the questions you asked, who affected those the most? Like, do you think it's the rich companies that are affected by these questions, or is it Joe Schmo like me that owns a company, tries to go to work every day and make a living? So when we think about balancing the budget, it took a damn long time to get here, didn't it? To get into this mess.
Okay. It took about, a year and a half, I guess, to get into this big a mess.
Well, no.
Yeah.
No.
Right? Yeah.
Well, we've been in a mess for a long time, ever since Trudeau has come to power, right? He literally...
Well, I guess if you consider 6 years to be a long time, Andrew, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the size of the budget deficit now, the best guess now is $354 billion, sir. 350, which is, it makes 23 billion or whatever the last budget deficit was. I mean, it looks like chicken feed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the only I agree with you. I want everything. I want the deficits gone. I want everything. I don't want I don't want the GST risen because it doesn't help anybody except it puts more money into the government's pocket, and it affects me when I buy stuff.
Okay.
Like that helps nobody.
All right. So how are you going to eliminate the deficit then, sir?
Trudeau's big Lob's friends and all these
right.
have a yachts off the
Well, there's $12 million. There's $12 million for refrigerators. I mean, that might get you an hour's worth of interest on a $343 billion deficit, sir. I mean, we have some tough decisions to make here. All right, we are where we are, and we have to deal with reality, Andrew. Okay, so you don't want to? Do you want to balance the budget? Let's get right to it here. Do you want to balance the budget in 5 years or not? Just answer the question. Not in 5 years. Okay. Too fast?
Too fast because
too fast. All right. Okay.
Regular Joe Schmo. That's the problem.
All right. Don't raise the GST.
Absolutely not.
All right. What about ending? Are you familiar with supply managed agriculture and how that works? Quota system. Okay. Should we end that?
The only thing we should end is buying material from a communist country that holds Muslims in concentration.
All right, you're way off topic, Andrew. Andrew, come on.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. If you can't stay on the topic, don't call. Bernie in Ottawa. Bernie, we're not reinventing the wheel around here. Come on. It's pretty basic. Thank you, Bernie, for waiting. Balancing the budget, sir. The Tories say it'll take 10 years. The New Democrats and the Liberals won't say how long it will take or if they ever plan to do it. The parliamentary budget officer says if we keep doing what we're doing, the budget won't be balanced for 50 years. I'm just asking, how about 5 years? Let's set a goal. We'll do it in 5 years. What do you think, Bernie?
Well, okay. Let's say. I mean, I think the budget should be balanced. I don't think you get to. Sometimes you don't get to predict exactly when it's going to happen, right? Like you look at California, they went into a surplus position because they had some, pretty amazing growth, and they took measures and they had the plan and they got there. So I think it can be done.
Okay.
But I think the second question, Rob, just to get to what you're saying is, whose deficit? You're talking about the federal deficit. But I was listening yesterday when you had Mr. Poilievre on, talking about how the Bank of Canada is buying the debt, right, which is a new thing from what I understand. And then I think if you look at what's happening in the provinces across Canada, we may be having a bigger deficit problem with provinces who are providing things like health services and stuff and their solvency, like Newfoundland, for example.
Oh, yeah.
But who knows what Ontario is going to look like. So I guess my point is, yes, the budget should be balanced, but maybe there actually needs to be a national plan with the provinces on that, because I think to look at only the federal deficit is probably going to put a lot of pressure on equalization, and it's going to probably start to split the country because it's all going to be about who gets what when the provinces are all running out of money.
Well, it's a very good point that you make, because the last time there were so-called austerity measures and belt tightening under the Martin government in the mid-'90s, when, and of course they're roundly applauded for getting the federal government's fiscal house in order, but what did they do? They downloaded a lot of costs onto the provinces. And what did the provinces do? They turned around and they downloaded all kinds of stuff onto the municipalities. Things like public transit, things like social housing. The provincial government used to pay for all of that. Now a lot of it is carried by property taxpayers. So, yeah, it's a very good point you made.
That's
okay,
right. And some of those decisions on long-term care homes and that we're living with now, those decisions were done back
What about
then.
raising the GST? It used to, for the longest time, it was 7%. Should it go back up to 7%?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you can, to what, to 7%? When they first introduced it in 91, it was 9%. Again, I think you have to focus on growth. And this is where the environmental agenda is really going to play into it, right? Because, if you're not getting the royalties in from, your natural resource sector to fill the federal coffers, you're going to have to replace that too, right? So I think there's a lot of gaps, that you're going to see in the system. But, if you're going to raise something and you end up raising the GST, is that going to be at the expense of a growth agenda, right? So I'm going to say no, because I think it's going to be counterproductive.
Okay. Should the federal government end supply management for agriculture?
That's a great question. I kind of think they should. I mean, there's a 280% tariff for stuff coming into Canada, which gives you a sense of the differentials that are there. But I think the question that's going to be raised if you do that, I mean, yes, lower prices, but that means imports, right? It means that, the Canadian supply, will get altered in that, even though you could argue that.
Well, you could say where we'll be offshoring our food supply.
Right.
Do you really want to do that after all the supply shocks that we've been through over, the pandemic and what we've learned through the course of a pandemic? I think people should totally be rethinking supply management now.
Yeah, well, it was designed to help the family farm.
Yes.
But the whole supply management system is now been completely corporatized, right? There are big interests and big money in that. So I think it should be thought through again. And I think it also discourages entrepreneurship in the dairy industry, right? You see some of the cheeses and some of those, products that are being done, a lot, but I think they're doing that despite the system, not because of it.
Okay, thank you. Very thoughtful,
right.
Very thoughtful. Yeah. Steve in Ottawa. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, sir. Should we balance the budget in 5 years?
I'm going to say no because, I don't know, it's going to kill everybody, like tax-wise.
Okay. Now, speaking of taxes, should we raise the GST? I'm just asking these questions because they're going to come up. Okay. I'm not saying go for it and raise the GST. I don't want to pay a higher GST, but
I think we should raise the GST if we get rid of the gas tax.
Get rid of the gas tax. Okay.
Get rid of the carbon tax and raise the GST, sure.
Well, that's very interesting that you say that because, the carbon tax is basically a consumption tax on specific items, right? Yeah.
Right. Well, then you're getting, you know what I mean? So if they get rid of that one, that's fair enough. Then, I don't mind paying the extra tax on everything else if they get rid of the carbon tax because that would lower our gas price, which is one of my main costs, really.
Okay.
But that's just me.
Should we end the quota system for dairy and chicken and eggs? Supply management.
I'd say it depends on what we're talking about here. Like if you're talking about maple syrup or something like that, where they have.
We're talking about milk. We're talking about milk, poultry, and eggs. That is supply managed agriculture. It's only in certain sectors.
Okay, but maple syrup is the same thing, isn't it, in Quebec and certain places?
I'm talking about supply managed agriculture.
Okay. Then I say no. I think
keep it in place.
I think it's fine. I mean,
okay.
You really want people to compete on price? I mean, kind of, you have big companies take over the whole industry. It'd be monopolized. You'd have the little guy would be pushed straight out of it, I think.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Getting some traction here. 750-1310, 750-1310. $343 billion is the best guess for the deficit right now. It will probably come down from that number when the pandemic relief programs for individuals and businesses eventually expire. Whatever the CERB is called now. Canada Recovery Benefit, CERB without the E, wage subsidy, rent subsidy. But at the same time, we have a government that has a lot of big ticket items in the works, right? Like $10 a day childcare. There's no plan at all. They're not even picking a decade, the Liberals or the New Democrats, and the Tories are saying 10 years. Do you think the government should try to move heaven and earth and do it in 5? And should we raise the GST and end supply managed agriculture? 3 election questions. This morning on the Rob Snow Show, Talk Back Hour, 750-1310. This is City News.
#1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, July 29th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, raining and 16 degrees in Ottawa and in Smith Falls. Here's what's making news at this hour. Ontario is reporting the number of new COVID cases has gone over the 200 mark today, with 218 new cases from about 19,400 tests. There are also 3 more deaths in Ontario from the virus. 8 new cases are in Ottawa, 1 in each of the other 3 local health units: Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, Eastern Ontario, and Renfrew. Ontario has met another of the conditions for moving beyond Step 3 of the reopening plan. Health Minister Christine Elliott says more than 80% of people in the province who are age 12 and older now have received at least 1 dose of COVID-19 vaccine. A 32-year-old man from Carleton Place died in a single vehicle crash on the 7 this morning that has closed portions of that highway right around Hazeldean. Police were called around 5 this morning to a car that had left the road, rolled, crossed the center median, coming to rest in the opposite lanes. A 32-year-old was ejected from his vehicle, pronounced dead at the scene. Canada has won another bronze this morning, bringing the medal total at the Olympics for Canada to 10. Every medal won so far has been by a female athlete from our country. The latest, a rowing bronze for pairs. City News Time at 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
With 3 election questions at the halfway point. 750-1310. Just 3 questions. I want to know your answers. Issues that might come up during the next federal election campaign. Probably about 2.5 weeks away from the call of the next federal election. Question number 1, should the federal government try to balance the budget in 5 years? No, not 10 years, Mr. O'Toole. No, not by the year 2070, Mr. Trudeau. Do it in 5 years. What's your answer to that? Question number 2, should the federal government raise the GST? Oh, sure, it wouldn't be popular. Ask Mr. Mulrooney. But it might help balance that budget. See question number 1. It's 5% now. Should we jack it back up to 7%? Question number 3. Should we end supply management for agriculture and dairy, eggs, and poultry? How would you answer that question? The GST. Question number 2. The GST. Jack it up to 7%. What would you think if they did that? They're probably not going to tell you that they're going to do it. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did it. Used to be 7%, right? And then Prime Minister Harper and his finance minister, the late Jim Flaherty, they cut it. First they cut it to 6, and then they cut it to 5. To me, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know, something's got to give. You have a government that's running a $350 billion budget deficit for 1 year. Something's got to give. It's just not sustainable. There's nobody on earth who thinks this is sustainable, left wing or right wing. You either have to cut spending or you have to raise taxes, and maybe, just maybe, you might even have to do both. You might have to cut spending and raise taxes. And certainly with the current government, with Mr. Trudeau's government, have you heard anything about cutting? Anything? Cut is a dirty word. The Prime Minister, just in the last week and a half or so, has been from one end of the country to the other. And what is he doing? He's promising to spend more and more and more. $5 billion for the Muskrat Falls Hydro Project in Newfoundland yesterday. And it's announced like he's buying a snack pack of Timbits at Tim Hortons. Just chocolate glazed, please. $1 billion for electric buses approved in Ottawa in 2 weeks. Untold billions for $10 a day childcare. $100 billion to build back better. It's just raining money, right? So $350 billion budget deficit doesn't even exist. Like it's just going to go away all on its own, as though the budget will balance itself. Mr. Harper. Everyone's been talking about Mr. Harper recently because he was on that American podcast, right? He has said in the past, the reason we have carbon tax is basically, the carbon tax is a consumption tax by another name. It's a consumption tax in the name of the environment. The reason we have carbon taxes now is because governments are too afraid of the political consequences of raising the sales tax, the GST, after he cut it. The NDP says it could give us all the great big government programs we would ever need: childcare, pharmacare, dental care, hair care, nail care, just by raising corporate taxes and sticking it to the rich a little bit more. Under the Liberals, they lowered income taxes for the middle class, but they raised all kinds of other taxes and did away with all kinds of tax credits. And the net effect, and the data bears this out, okay, vast majority of Canadians are paying higher taxes under Justin Trudeau than they were under Stephen Harper. Known fact. Sin taxes, the beer tax, for example, goes up in perpetuity now. The carbon tax is supposed to go up to $170 a ton. It's a consumption tax. Now, I think most Canadians pay way too much tax already. We are overtaxed. When you're paying half of what you earn in tax, that's too much tax. When you have to work half the year for the government to pay your tax bill, it's too much tax. Tax Freedom Day doesn't come until 6 months into the year. I think everybody deserves a tax break, but I'd also like my own jet airplane, but it's not on. Just like a tax cut is not on if you're running a $350 billion budget deficit. Something's got to give. And I hate the GST as much as the next person, but the simple fact is you got to pick your poison. And a GST hike is the most efficient way for a government to raise revenue. It's preferred over income tax hikes or corporate tax hikes. It's more efficient. But let's get to the phones. Holy cow. We've struck a chord all of a sudden. People want to call. That's good. I'm glad to see that Rachel is in Ottawa. You're on City News. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to hear from you. Should the federal government balance the budget in 5 years? The best anyone is promising right now is 10. Do you think we could do it in 5?
If we're talking about the Liberal government doing that, I don't believe that they will have the capacity to. I don't think that they have proven to me that they are willing to do that. And as you said, this is why we're seeing Justin Trudeau promise money left, right, and center. And I think that a lot of the spending is valid. However, I think a lot of it is also posturing for an election. I'm 24 years old, and I'm extremely concerned not only about my future, my brother's future who's younger than me, my potential children's future. I'm not very positive. I'm a little pessimistic about what the future will hold if we continue on this path that we're on, frankly.
I think that's very
just look
wise.
at the housing market.
I think you're wise beyond your years, Rachel. Okay.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay. So, you don't think we can get it done, though, in 5 years? Is that what you're saying? That seems to be the prevailing option right now, that maybe I'm being...
Well, it would be fantastic. Right. It would be great, but I think that it will have to take a big shift in whatever government comes to power, and I don't see that with the Liberals,
and let's move along to the GST, then. Should we hike it back up?
Well, I'm all about less taxes. I did like the idea of scrapping the carbon tax and maybe potentially raising the GST because I know, a lot of farmers especially and a lot of individuals depend on fuel to work. So, I am especially, I'm originally from southwestern Ontario, and our farmers are COVID has put a real hit on them.
Oh, yeah.
I know you're talking about supply management, and they have not been treated well by all levels of government.
Okay. And what should we do with supply management? Should we get rid of it? It means we pay more for those foodstuffs, so should we get...
For sure. And, so I think that now might not be the time to get rid of it, but I think that if there was a phase out of it, that would be not the worst thing. And I come from a cattle industry background, so... I am aware of the supply management, even though that supply management is for poultry. We deal with a lot of different farmers. Yeah. However, I'm all about domestic. Like, we have so many resources here in Canada. We should, and then again, maybe that just goes to show the kind of leadership we have, like with dealing with exports and whatnot. We should be putting Canada first. Right now is my priority, and Canadians first.
And maybe that certainly should qualify when it comes to our food supply, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We have the best food here in Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, the Canadian milk is so much better than the American milk. You can just taste it. It does a body good, I've been told. Thank you, Rachel. Good call. All right, let's get going here. Lower Town. David. Good morning, David.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, David. Three election questions, David. Do you think we could balance the budget in 5 years?
Not the Liberals.
Not the Liberals. Okay.
No,
Do you think whoever forms the next government, do you think they should try and balance the budget in 5 years?
That will, what the Liberals would do, they'd have to stop all their, current plans.
Okay.
They'd have to cut a lot of things.
Yeah.
And they just wouldn't do it.
Okay, they wouldn't do it. Well, not even the Conservatives are promising to do it. Do you think the Conservatives should promise to do it?
Well, the thing is, if they do promise to do it, alarm bells will go off and everybody will think cuts. Yeah, nobody wants cuts. Right? Yeah, with the Liberals, it'd be like asking the New York Yankees to cut their budget by 80% and still feel the winner.
Right, and not wear pinstripes. Okay. Question number 2. Should we raise the GST?
I don't think so.
Don't think so?
You were mentioning about when Stephen Harper had cut it down to 6 and then to 5. I think, if I recall correctly, during his years, our dollar was flirting with parity with the U.S. and sometimes even above. And right now, it's sort of crawled back to 80%. Now it seems to be slipping.
It's about 80. It's about 80, 79, something.
Things always cost more when your dollar's lower to the people in that country, it seems. So I don't think.
Don't think so. Okay. All right. Okay. Tough crowd this week. Okay, on supply management for dairy, poultry, and eggs. Should we end that? The quota system. You have to own quota in order to be in those businesses.
All I'm going to say on that subject is I'm for whatever helps the farmers, whatever benefits
the farmers. Okay, well, supply management is farmer friendly. It's not so much consumer friendly, but it's farmer friendly.
Yeah, whatever helps the farmers out, they need all the help they can get.
All right. Okay, David, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Whatever helps the farmers. I'm sure our farmer listeners love to hear that. Mark in Ottawa South. Good morning, Mark.
Thank you, Rob.
Balance the budget in 5 years, yes or no?
No, I don't think it can be done.
Can't be done, okay.
Everybody can be in favor of a goal, but then everybody is opposed to any specific plan proposed to actually achieve this goal.
Right.
It's very important during this election that the media specifically ask the leading candidates to state their specific plans to reduce the deficit. I'm afraid Justin Trudeau is going to do to the Conservative leader exactly what his father did to Robert Stanfield in 1974. In that election, the issue was inflation. Robert Stanfield proposed a 90-day freeze on prices and wages. He was immediately attacked by Pierre Elliott Trudeau.
Who then did what?
And who said that there would be no price and wage control.
And then he did.
And then in 1976, he instituted them for 2 years.
Wage and price controls. Yeah, sure. Right. Yeah, okay. Raise the GST. What do you think about that?
I think we're going to have to.
I think
of course, I don't want it to happen, but we've got to be realistic.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Supply management, should that be ended? By the way, none of the main parties, People's Party is probably going to promise that, but none of the big parties are. What do you think?
It should be scaled back, but it's not going to happen because Quebec is opposed to it.
Mm-hmm.
And supply management should be scaled back, as Professor Ian Lee has stated, but the same way the Energy East pipeline should be built. But they're not going to happen because Quebec is opposed to it.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Always good call from Ottawa South. This is the Rob Snow Show, 3 election questions on a Thursday morning. Back with the final quarter and your answers. This is City News.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store. A popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself, and to see our brand name Papa Jack. And Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. It sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
Back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
3 election questions. Want your answers about issues that might come up during the next federal campaign, like balancing the budget. I think we could do that in 5 years. Aaron O'Toole says it'll take 10. Justin Trudeau won't say how long it will take. The PBO says it could take 50 years. How about 5? How about 5? Try to balance it in 5. Question number 2, should we raise the GST? The blessed goods and services tax back up to 7%, to help with question number 1, balancing the budget. And should the federal government end supply management for agriculture? Should we end supply management for agriculture? The quota system for dairy, poultry, eggs, should we get rid of that? None of the main parties in the election would dare to touch supply management. They need the farmer vote, okay? They need the dairy farmer vote in Quebec, to Mark's point. So don't expect the Liberals, the Conservatives, the NDP, or the Bloc to go anywhere near supply management. It is it's a sacred Holstein. People have accused me in the past of being a sellout to the dairy lobby, like I'd be here doing this radio show if I was on the take from the dairy lobby, right? Because I've actually spoken favorably about supply management, and I've been called commie, Marxist, go to Cuba, you'd be better, you'd fit in better in Venezuela. All we ask of our wonderful Canadian dairy farmers is that they work 16 hours a day, 365 days a year, okay? With no benefits, no vacation. And yet in the news media, they are so often painted as greedy bandits by Toronto columnists who don't know the difference between a Holstein and an air share and would never survive a day's work on a Canadian dairy farm. But we pay more for milk and butter and chicken and eggs because of supply management. The prices are higher. We have had supply managed agriculture in this country since the 60s. The goal of it, the supporters say, is to provide stability. Stability in production, stability in prices. We control, the farmers control through their marketing boards the amount of product that is produced. They say it prevents shortages. It also limits waste. It prevents oversupply, and it prevents volatility in prices, stability in prices. And we do that by having a quota system. And very, 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 very punitive imports. Tariffs on imports. And it's for dairy, it's for chickens, it's for hens, it's for turkeys, and it's for eggs. And it first came into place in Ontario and Quebec, and then it came into place in BC, and then it went national. And before we had supply management, sometimes there'd be no milk. Sometimes there would be so much milk, the milk would have to be poured down the drain. And there was a lot of seasonal volatility in prices. So this is the system that came into place. The quota system. Farmer can only produce what the market needs, and that's determined by the marketing board in each province. As I said, punitive tariffs make it uneconomical to import milk, for example, into Canada, American milk, but you pay a price for that, a higher price. You pay more for milk at a grocery store in Canada than you would at, say, Walmart in the United States. Absolutely you do. And your turkey and your eggs. The political parties don't want to go anywhere near it, save Maxime Bernier and the People's Party. And let's face it, when you think about it, Mad Max would probably be the leader of the Conservative Party today, if not for the dairy farm vote. That's what put Andrew Scheer over the top ever so slightly, you remember, in the Conservative Party leadership race. But there's an election on the way, and don't you think where you get your food and how you get your food should be an election issue? One of the stories of the pandemic has been what? Supply chain disruptions, having to rely on international supply chains for things like vaccines and PPE. That's why I wanted to introduce this as a topic. I wonder if this gives people pause, maybe makes them rethink supply management. Since we're talking about something basically like the food supply. The case has been made, if we didn't have supply management, we would be a country beholden to the mega corporate farming giants of America. Okay? And sure, they can give you cheaper milk, and sure, they can give you cheaper turkey at Thanksgiving, but they're mega farms that rely frequently on illegal farm labor, and they don't have the same safety standards, food safety standards that our farmers have. Now, some people have told me, Rob, when you say that, you're falling for the agri-propaganda. Do you really think you're taking your life into your hands when you drink a glass of American milk or eat an American chicken wing? I don't take the risk, quite frankly. I love Canadian milk too much. Okay, it does a body good. But the anti-poverty groups say supply management contributes to poverty because it adds $300, $400, $500 a year to the grocery bill of poor people. The pandemic, though, has highlighted the need for domestic production capacity. Do you really want to outsource food production? Because you could say you abandon supply management, you're outsourcing your food supply. Okay? Marie in the West End. Thank you, Marie, for listening to my rant.
That was good. Very learned a little bit there.
Okay, good. All right. What do you think about balancing the budget in 5 years? Do you think
There's
that's
no way.
No way.
There's
Impossible.
no way he's going to balance the budget in 5. I don't even think you're going to be able to budget in 10. The way that things are going. And remember, he said that in the last election campaign, too. That was one of his promises, that he was going to balance the budget by 2019. And look where we are today. We're miles beyond that.
Oh, yes.
That's one promise he made. He made a promise that about the child care. No, he was going to do this and that. No, nothing was done, but now he's going to go $10 a day daycare, and we're going to balance a budget. Election reform. He promised that. Where are we? That's not even mentioned anymore.
No, it's not even mentioned anymore.
The veterans, the natives in court. There's so much that people should sit down and sit up and take notice, I should say, and realize.
All right, let's get through these other two questions here. Should we raise the GST?
No.
No.
And the only reason I say that is because most of us Canadians, we've gone through a lot with this pandemic. We don't need a tax rate raise right now on that. That's my opinion.
All right. What about supply management? What about supply management?
You know what, Rob? I'm going to be honest with you. That's why I listen very carefully to you. I don't really know a lot about it. It's something that I really have not looked into.
You got to brush up on that.
But just remember, when we go to the polls, that the scandals, the promises, but the one thing that bothers me most, Rob, and I'll just end on this. He's gone across this country from BC to Newfoundland the other day. Now he'll be heading up north next. I hope people realize that all these election promises that are being made, because we know there's an election coming, that's on our dime.
Oh, sure.
That's not out of his election expenses, and I don't think that's right. So
good
that's
point.
my
Thank you, Marie. Thank you.
you.
Yep. Very in tune with what's going on right now with all the pre-election goodies falling from the sky. We have a great final hour of the program coming up. Doris Grinspun back on the program. Registered Nurses Association of Ontario with the RNAO wants to see in a back-to-school plan. Dr. Adam Kassam, president of the Ontario Medical Association. We're going to talk about the backlog of procedures in Ontario's hospitals and the Ford government's commitment to spend more than $300 million to reduce the surgery and medical procedure backlog. Don Drummond, former TD Bank chief economist, Queen's University professor, C.D. Howe Institute fellow in residence on the fiscal situation in Canada and what are the senators up to. In the free agent frenzy, we'll cover it all with Wayne Scanlan. He writes for Sportsnet.ca, covers the Senators for Sportsnet.ca. All ahead. That's a great final hour David's lined up for us. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, July 29th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, raining and 16 degrees in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ontario's reporting a number of new COVID cases has gone over 200 today. 218, the number, from about 19,400 tests that were completed. Now, the province is also reporting 3 additional deaths. Now, out of these new cases, 8 of them are in Ottawa. The rest of the local health units, that's Eastern Ontario, Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and Renfrew, all reporting 1 new case of the virus. City News Time, 11:01. Now your forecast. And here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll get into periods of light rain, especially through the latter part of the morning into the afternoon. And that light rain will continue into the evening. And then thunderstorms possible overnight. It is on the cool side today, 20 for the high, 11 for the low, and just 19 for the high tomorrow with sun and cloud. For today, the high, 20.
And right now, raining and 16 degrees in both Ottawa and Smiths Falls. A 32-year-old Carleton Place man was thrown from his vehicle and pronounced dead at the scene of a single vehicle crash this morning. This happened on Highway 7 near Hazeldean. Police say there are going to be detours and lane closures for some time today for that investigation. An incident that happened last fall has resulted in charges just being laid now. Officers had tried to pull over a black Civic near Kingston. Police say that contact was made between the cruiser and the suspect vehicle. It prompted them to stop the pursuit, but the suspect car was later involved in a collision on the highway. 31-year-old Lindsay Arthur of Kingston facing several charges now, including dangerous operation of a vehicle and impaired driving. As the pandemic continues to affect residents' mental health, Distress Centre of Ottawa reminding it is there to help those who feel the need. Here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
Distress Center Manager of Media, Marketing and Communications Leslie Scott says those unable to make a phone call can still reach out for help via the text and chat option on its website. Scott tells City News the center is the first point of contact for many, and that can help connect them to other services.
If somebody calls us and they need a community service like the mobile crisis team, we're the first people that they're calling, and then we can outsource to them. And then from there, the mobile crisis team can outsource to a local hospital or community program.
She adds the most common age groups calling to the center are 18 to 34-year-olds, with 35 to 60-year-olds behind that. Alex Gouge, City News.
Now, Ontario has met one of the 3 conditions it has laid out before it moves beyond Step 3 of the reopening plan. Health Minister Christine Elliott says more than 80% of people aged 12 and older in Ontario have now received at least 1 shot of COVID vaccine. Before moving forward, the government has also said 75% of people 12 and older have to have received their 2nd shot. And no public health unit in the province can have less than 70% of eligible people fully vaccinated. But some, including the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, calling for more detail on what a post-Step 3 Ontario is going to look like. City News Time, 11:04. Britain is becoming wetter and warmer, all the result of climate change.
Leading meteorologists have released a report that shows Britain's 10 hottest years in a century have occurred since 2002. According to the annual State of the UK Climate Report, 2020 was the 5th wettest and 3rd warmest year on record, stretching back to the 19th century. The report said summer temperatures in Britain were likely to hit 104 degrees in the coming years. The highest temperature ever recorded in the UK is 101.7 degrees Fahrenheit, registered in Cambridge in July 2019. Karen Chamas, London.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Very busy final hour ahead here on the Rob Snow Show. It's been the free agent frenzy this week. A lot of wheeling and dealing in the National Hockey League. Wayne Scanlan will give us the Ottawa Senators lowdown. Longtime hockey columnist for the Ottawa Citizen, hockey writer now, Sportsnet.ca. We've talked in the past about the the massive backlog that the pandemic has created. I mean, there was certainly a backlog before the COVID-19 pandemic. It has only worsened and worsened a great deal since then in medical procedures, surgeries, imaging, diagnostic imaging, these sorts of things. The Ford government has announced plans to spend $324 million to try and get a handle on that backlog in Ontario hospitals. So we'll go over that with Dr. Adam Kassam, President, Ontario Medical Association, fairly new in that role. We'll talk about the government's balance sheet federally. Don Drummond, former chief economist, Toronto Dominion Bank, Queen's University professor, fellow in residence at the C.D. Howe Institute. But first, Premier Ford says the back-to-school plan is coming next week. But what should be in it? Doris Grinspun joins me now, CEO, Registered Nurses Association of Ontario. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks for having us.
It's a great pleasure. What do you think should be part of the plan, the back-to-school plan?
I will give you on the plan, but let me comment on your previous comment about surgeries and procedures and working at 160% capacity. Where are the nurses that will do that? That's my question. People come to the hospitals for procedures and they stay overnight if they need to stay several days because they need nursing care. So we can come back on that at another day.
Okay.
As for the schools, the Premier yesterday said in Thunder Bay that he's releasing finally the plan next week. So my first comment is a bit too late. But there is hope there. I was very concerned, given what's happening in Alberta, that our Premier may get some ideas of going wildly offline with precautionary principle. He actually says that he will tackle ventilation, which we are asking. He also says that they will beef up precautions. They will beef up protocols, which to me it means that Dr. Moore won on the battle of masks on, because we are asking that masks absolutely need to stay on. It's the best way to protect the kids.
You think masks should be on? Masks should be on.
On, absolutely on. Listen, this is the largest congregate setting with unvaccinated people that this country will have across the country, not only Ontario, right? Because as we know, 12 and under, they cannot vaccinate. And as of yesterday, only 33% of the 12 and up, the 12 to 17 had fully vaccinated, right? So unless everybody else that is 12 and up, 66% had only one dose, right? So we need to catch up a lot. There is a good 30% that doesn't even have one dose from 12 to 17. And below that, nobody, right? And teachers, we are asking that there be a mandatory vaccination for teachers, same as you know, Rob, we are asking for all healthcare professionals.
Okay.
So,
pardon me, Doris. If I could just interrupt there. Mandatory vaccination for teachers. Just teachers? Teachers are far from the only ones in the public education system who would come into regular contact with students. But bus drivers, teachers' assistants, guidance counselors, all of them. Why not all of them?
Yes,
all of them.
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay, all right.
I'm with you. Same as we are saying in the healthcare system, anybody that faces patients, because patients have enough burden with their own illnesses, they don't need to worry if we are vaccinated. The same, you're absolutely right, with the children. We need to contain this virus. This virus is not going away. There are variants. So the best we can do for now is to really contain a fourth wave, right?
Yeah.
And we all have a job to do on that. So
okay.
The fact that the Premier in Thunder Bay said that the protocols that there will be strengthened, that gives me a level of comfort vis-a-vis what's happening in Alberta, which is worse than wildfires.
Okay, so improve ventilation in schools. Okay, which is sounds like it's a priority for the Premier. It's
absolutely
easier said. It's easier said than done. It's easier said than done. I mean, anybody.
Right. So
yeah.
Remember, we have banks that have marble, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we have schools, many that are decrepit, with all the respect.
Oh, sure. Mandatory indoor masking, what smaller class sizes, mandatory vaccination for, I guess you would call it...
educators.
Pupil-facing staff, let's call it that, okay? All right.
Very good. We will change that in our
okay, you just credit me.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, like a royalty as well.
We will send you, except we don't get
What
paid
about-
for that,
what
but
about-
we will send you the royalty of the
I know
98% good emails, and also we will send you the royalty of the 2% that use foul language with us.
Okay. I know when the schools were open that there were public health nurses in the schools. What should happen there?
In our letter, we are also asking that. So 625 public health nurses that they funded for 2 years, they absolutely, we asked already before, need to remain permanent, not even just for a year more, permanent. Children will come back with a lot of, 17 months, right? Pandemic, and it's not going away, and months and months without classes. So they need the support both for COVID issues, but they need the support also for emotional issues, social issues, you name it. And the teachers need it too. And the same we are asking for the 50 nurses that were allocated and given the funding for indigenous communities.
Okay. A public health nurse. Give me an idea what a public health nurse does. What does a public health nurse do?
Supports the translation of policies into practice, right?
Okay.
Goes through, usually with the way it went is through the principal. So the teachers will bring questions to the principal, and the principal will gather and get the one public health nurse or two assigned to them to really translate and help develop those protocols for the school. It helps also identify children at risk. It helps overall with health promotion. If they find new challenges, issues of anxiety, etc. That public health nurse, we used to have a nurse in school always. Maybe when you were a child too, I don't know. But it used to be that every school had a nurse that went on the sideways during her.
Well, I would like your thoughts on this because I am old enough to remember I did get some of my childhood immunizations at school.
Yeah.
What do you think about getting shots at school?
Yeah. And also issues of communication with parents, support for parents on how to, work with children, especially children that come from vulnerable populations and communities, children at risk. They identify that, they support that, they do the linkages with the community, resources, etc.
Okay, let me ask you. I just looked it up here. Children who attend school in Ontario must have proof of immunization against diphtheria, tetanus, polio, measles, mumps, rubella, MMR vaccine, meningococcal, and whooping cough, pertussis. I know that the vaccine here is for 12 plus, but should it be mandatory for 12 plus, or you don't go to school? What do you think about that, Doris Grinspun?
Well, the reality is that I would at the very least start with the teaching staff, right?
Okay.
I mean, if we don't start with the teaching staff, the same as with healthcare workers, this is a non-starter, and the Premier is not going there at this point, so, the rest is hypothetical. Why would the Premier not go with mandatory vaccination for healthcare workers when 96% to 98% of them are supporting and asking for that? Is beyond us, right? It's more about ideology than really having any backlash on that. So let's start there, and then let's move, to other areas. And educators to us is a must because, as I said, it's the largest congregate setting with unvaccinated people.
Okay, so very quickly, I do want to get a comment from you because we are going to have the president of the Ontario Medical Association on in about a half an hour here on dealing with the backlog. Give me the nursing perspective there, the surgical and diagnostic backlog.
We are on board with that.
Yeah.
The problem are two. One is how serious the fourth wave of COVID will be, because there will be one, no doubt. Hopefully we can contain it in such a way that We don't see hospital beds occupied with people with COVID, which was what happened before. Second, we do not have the number of registered nurses, RNs, to deal with 116% capacity that the hospitals think that they will be able to work at. I will be happy if we can work at the 100% capacity. We went to this pandemic, you and I spoke about that, with the lowest RN per population in Canada. And to layer to that is the fact that this pandemic was lengthy, that nurses are exhausted, that there is a good percentage that are saying post-pandemic they're moving on, and that we have Bill 124 that, quite frankly, nurses are absolutely furious about that, because in the U.S. they don't have that cap.
Okay,
and
I want
they're moving there because Biden is saying, come on, we need you.
Okay, I want to just confirm one more thing, because we've been doing some research on our own here. For nursing students in Ontario, for example, here in Ottawa, Algonquin College, you can go to nursing school at Algonquin College. If you go out on a field placement, vaccines are required. MMR, chickenpox, tetanus, diphtheria, polio, hepatitis B. It kind of lends credence to your idea that, well, why would COVID-19 be an exception, don't you think?
Absolutely. We also have vaccines that are required to work in any organization. We always have had.
Right.
Listen, we have also a requirement to drive without drinking.
Of course, yes.
To put seatbelts. Like when people say, it's my body, well, yes, but patients come first in the case of healthcare professionals. And the first duty of any healthcare workers is do no harm. And if we are unvaccinated, we don't know if we are not doing harm.
Okay. Thank you, Doris Grinspun. Always a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show.
So much.
From the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, Doris Grinspun. Back talking sports and all the moves that the Senators made this week and the moves yet to come with Wayne Scanlan from Sportsnet.ca. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the centre. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring, and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our centre the Ottawa Good Food Box, as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years. and Mark Mobile's a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
They call it the free agent frenzy, and the Ottawa Senators made some moves. Wayne Scanlan covers them for you this morning at sportsnet.ca, and he joins me here on the Rob Snow Show on City News. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
You say Pierre Dorion, the general manager of the Ottawa Senators, deserves a medal for his work. Why do you say that?
Well, I guess I referred to it as I got the Olympics on my brain, and I called it financial gymnastics because, with a flat salary cap and teams trying to make changes, trying to make improvements, trying to dump contracts, it can be very complicated. The one thing that Dorion has going for him is he's got a lot of cap room, but I thought he did a brilliant job of moving Evgeny Dadonov, a player that they signed just last year, to a $15 million deal over 3 years. Didn't really work out. He was brought in to help the power play, didn't score a single power play goal. So for them to move him to the Las Vegas Knights and get a decent defenseman in return, Nick Holden, I thought that was pretty slick maneuvering because he actually dumped a contract, has some room now to go get a forward or two, and he picked up a useful defenseman while he was at it.
Okay, so gets rid of a player who has underperformed and was making a lot of money for maybe, I don't know these people, Michael Delzato or Nick Holden, which is kind of par for the course with the Ottawa Senators when it comes to some of these players. But what are they, journeymen? What are they? How would you describe their
Delzato, I'm a little surprised you hadn't heard of him at all because he was a first-round draft pick way back when. He's now, I think he's 31, and was with the New York Rangers and other teams, well-traveled. Both of these guys are I would say, journeymen. Delzato, used to be able to kind of run a power play, and it would give you maybe 15 power play points in a season. Last year in Columbus, hardly was used on the power play, so I think his game has changed a little bit. It was interesting to hear DJ Smith talk about Delzato improving his play away from the puck because he was considered kind of more of an offensive type guy. Nick Holden is purely a defensive guy and actually had a really good playoff with the Vegas Knights. He was a healthy scratch going into the playoffs and then got in Game 2 against the Minnesota Wild in that crazy first-round series. It went 7 games. He came in and became a fixture on defense, played some big minutes, scored 7 points, which was more than he'd scored in the entire regular season. He's getting $1.4 million in real dollars, and his cap hit is 1.7, so not expensive at all. And Delzato, they signed to a 2-year deal for $2 million per season, so not a huge outlay there either, nor a huge time commitment. So it's kind of paving the way and maybe holding some spots, or hold in a spot, as I called it in the column, for Jake Sanderson and some of these other good young defensemen that are coming up through the pipeline.
So as you say, they entered this period known as the free agent frenzy with $29 million in salary cap room, and it's only grown now because of these moves to $30.5 million. Now, the Senators are not a big spending team. I mean, anybody who follows the team knows that. They've been pretty clear about that. They're more of a floor team than a ceiling team. But still, that's a lot of room. So if they're going to spend any of it, what do they want to spend it on?
Well, that's a great question. And how are they going to do it? Are they going to sign a free agent, or are they going to maneuver a trade and get somebody else's maybe what they think of as a problem, a contract they want to unload. So there's free agents out there. David Krejci hasn't signed yet. I'm sure you've heard of him, of the Boston Bruins, one of those Leaf killers. So he could be available. It'd be interesting to see if he goes back to Boston or not. And then there's guys that are being mentioned that Ottawa might have some interest, include Adam Henrique. He actually played in the World Championships with Connor Brown and Nick Paul, and they had some great chemistry there. But he's got $5.8 million owed for the next 3 seasons. That seems pretty rich for Ottawa's blood.
Yep.
But would Anaheim maybe eat some of that and move him? Nazem Kadri is a guy that, I think the late Brian Murray wanted to draft him way back when.
Oh, really?
The former Maple Leaf and Columbus Blue Jacket, and I think he's got a season left at 4.5. Ryan Strome of the New York Rangers is around 4.5 and has a year left. Ottawa's rumored to be interested in him. He's kind of an interesting player because I think he's like around 27, 28, still a little bit of upside, and I think could really help the Senators. And Sean Monahan, the former Ottawa 67s star, he's got a big ticket as well at $6.3 million. I think that's a little bit of a problem. He's got 2 years left, so would they go down that road? Again, maybe they need some relief at the other end for, Calgary to eat a little bit. But, those are kind of some possibilities, I guess, as the Senators look to, they lost a good forward in Dadonov. He wasn't perfect, but he was a veteran who could score. So now you probably need to pick up a winger or fill from within. And they have expressed the need to get a top 2 center. So I think we're kind of waiting for that next shoe to drop.
What did you think of DJ Smith, the head coach? He has signed a contract extension. What do you think about that, Wayne?
Well, I think it's great. I think he's done a great job and certainly deserving of the extension, and it provides some security for him. And the players know now who's boss and whose style we're going to play because he's not a lame duck entering the last year of his contract. But what confuses me is that the guy who hired him 2 years ago, Pierre Dorian, he is in the last year of his contract. So you've kind of got a lame duck GM, although he made the point yesterday in a Zoom call that there is a team option on his contract beyond this last year. So he kind of has an extra year sitting out there. But, generally, I think how these things go, Rob, that you hire the GM hires the coach. Well, in this case, the GM was already in place. He hired the coach, but now the coach gets the extension before the GM does. So I find that a little odd, and it's interesting that whether it's the draft or free agency, Tyler Boucher was kind of a controversial draft pick last week at 10th overall. Everybody talking about the Senators going off the board. Well, he's very much a DJ Smith type of player. And it's almost like they're building this franchise around the coach. And here you got the GM that hired the coach that really is in need of a contract. And he's the one that engineered this rebuild. He's the one that traded Erik Karlsson and got that huge haul for him, and we're still reaping the dividends for that. Tim Stützle on down. There's so many, Josh Norris, so many good players that they picked up after moving Erik Karlsson. So I find that a bit perplexing and kind of waiting to hear if there might be any news on that front.
Thank you very much for the update.
Okay,
Look
Rob.
forward to all the news to come from the Ottawa Senators. Wayne Scanlan writes for Sportsnet.ca. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, July 29th. Good afternoon. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, 16 degrees and showers. Here's what's making news this hour. Ontario reporting the number of new COVID-19 cases has gone over 200, with 218 from around 19,400 tests. Also, 3 more deaths in the province from the virus. 8 new cases in Ottawa, 1 in each of the other 3 local health units: Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, Eastern Ontario, and Renfrew County. The province has met one of 3 conditions for moving beyond Step 3 in its reopening plan. Health Minister Christine Elliott says more than 80% of people in the province aged 12 and above have now received at least 1 dose of a vaccine. Before moving forward, the government has also said 75% of people 12 and older must have received their 2nd dose, and no public health unit can have less than 70% of eligible people fully vaccinated. And a 32-year-old Carleton Place man died in a single vehicle crash on the 7 this morning. It was just minutes after 5 o'clock when the OPP was called to the highway eastbound around Hazeldean. A car had left the road, rolled, crossed the center median, coming to rest in the westbound lanes. The 32-year-old was ejected from the vehicle and pronounced dead at the scene. Expect delays in the area. City News Time, 11:33. I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Anticipating a coming surge in procedures, the Ontario government has announced a $324 million plan to reduce surgical wait times as the healthcare system begins to reopen as well. So for some reaction to this and some insight on what it's going to take to get a handle on this backlog situation, we're joined by Dr. Adam Kassam, President, Ontario Medical Association. Good morning, Doctor.
Rob, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Not too bad.
Glad to hear it. How severe is this backlog right now, in your opinion?
Well, the recent OMA analysis that we've actually conducted has found that COVID-19, of course, has created a backlog of almost 16 million healthcare services. So that's not only surgical procedures that you talked off the top about, but also diagnostics as well as other types of procedural-based delays. And so we think about things like MRIs and CT scans. We think about cataract surgeries, hip and knee replacements. We think about coronary artery bypass grafts and other types of procedures that have been delayed. So the total number is quite significant, and is something that, of course, we are concerned about as a profession. And the news by the ministry yesterday was very, very much welcome.
Okay. You said 16 million.
Million with an M. So 1 for every Ontarian if you do the math.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And the ones you cited are they're very common, right? The most common, right?
Absolutely. They're some of the most common ones
hips,
as well.
Knees, cataracts, bypass, these sorts of things, yeah.
Absolutely. And those are also the top procedures that have the largest amount of delay. So, for example, knee replacements, there's about a 22-month delay, so almost a 2-year delay. For cataract surgeries, that's 21 months. For MRIs, it's 10 months. For CT scans, it's 4 months, and you can go down the list. And so the idea behind not only the announcement, but of course, working with physicians is going to be key in order to be able to get through the backlog in the coming months and years.
Okay. Dr. Adam Kassam is here, President, Ontario Medical Association. Are you like a family physician, sir, if you don't mind me asking? Or?
I'm a physiatrist. I'm a rehab specialist. So I take care of patients who've had strokes or spinal cord injuries or brain injuries, any injuries that happen as a result of a muscle, bone, or nerve injury.
Gotcha. Okay. I just asked that because I'm struck by this number, 22 months.
It's a significant
for
number,
a new
absolutely.
knee or a new hip, for example. So if I've had a workplace injury or I'm just, my knees are worn out from just wear and tear or whatever, and I go to my family physician, you're telling me the wait time now, I mean, it's always been lengthy, but not unusual now to wait 22 months from the time I go see my physician. The physician schedules the diagnostic image. I have my appointment with a specialist, and then I finally actually get to the surgery. Is 22 months?
That's correct, Rob. And
almost 2 years.
Almost years. And I'll be very honest. I think that as we have seen the various waves of the shutdowns across our society happen because of the COVID-19 pandemic, that also, of course, impacted hospitals and their ability to do procedures. So we had situations during surges of COVID-19 where operating rooms and other diagnostic facilities were either shut down because of trying to make space for COVID-19 patients, or they were being used to treat COVID-19 patients, like converting them into ICU beds. And so that combination of over the past 18 months of having these rolling shutdowns has created this backlog, which, of course, as you have already described, existed before and has only been exacerbated as a result of COVID.
Plus, I think about the person who needs knee surgery or hip surgery or back surgery or whatever the case might be, cataracts. My father in Nova Scotia waited 1.5 years to get his eyes done for cataract surgery. So it's not just an Ontario thing, of course. The entire country's dealing with this. What happens is the quality of life of the patient deteriorates as they wait. And there can be, Doctor, I'm sure you would, there's this cascading effect in the health of the individual waiting for this procedure, right?
Rob, I see patients on a daily basis who have arthritis in their knees and hips, and I do sort of injections and other types of procedures that can help, but I also help with some of the management of all of the other ancillary services that are required in order to, as you were describing, maintain a quality of life that is acceptable. And people who live with morbidity, which is negative outcomes as a result of a disease, so pain and suffering, that can escalate as people are waiting to get their knees or their joints replaced, or in the case of people who have deteriorating vision, making sure that they get the care that they need so that they continue to be able to see. All of these things you can imagine for your dad and for others across the province and certainly across the country. This is a question about quality of life. And so the fact that we want to be able to work through this backlog in a sustainable, in a quick and frankly a safe way, it actually has material impact on the quality of life of our patients.
Okay. Yeah, and if somebody's waiting 22 months, let's say somebody's waiting 22 months and they're in pain, okay, severe chronic pain because they need a new hip or they need back surgery or whatever the case might be. They need, in the interim, they need pain management, and we know. There's ample evidence about this now. Waiting to have the pain relief of the surgery in the interim, people in the past have been prescribed narcotics, and this has contributed to the opioid crisis. So there are all these offshoots that we have to consider here. Okay, somebody's going to wait 2 years for knee surgery. They're going to need pain management. How do you make sure they don't become addicted to a powerful narcotic? Right? Rob, it's very, very delicate here, what we're dealing with.
Indeed, there are many layers of care that need to be considered when we're thinking about policy measures, when we're thinking about trying to treat the patient who's in front of us, and making sure that we're using all of the tools in our tool belt. And as you've already described, even within the context of our pandemic, we have seen a surge in demand for mental health and addictions services and care. And so when we think about the complexity of medical care, when it relates to a variety of different illnesses, disease, pain, suffering, etc., it's important that there is a collaborative effort by all of those in the healthcare sector to make sure that ultimately Ontarians get the care that they need when they need it. And doctors have been always very clear about wanting to be able to do this in the right way, the safe way, and we are going to continue to do that work moving forward.
Okay, so $324 million, it's a lot of money to reduce surgery backlogs and procedure backlogs for such things as MRIs, for example. What sort of capacity exists within the healthcare system from both, say, an equipment point of view and also a human resources point of view? Do we have the specialists? Do we have the doctors? Do we have the nurses? Do we have the therapists to ramp up in a big way, to work at over capacity for an extended period of time? given that a lot of our frontline healthcare workers are just coming through a very difficult period. A lot of them are suffering burnout. A lot of them, with nurses, some of them have left the profession. What's your understanding of it, Doctor?
Well, Rob, burnout in healthcare is a real issue. And I've been a doctor on the front lines of this pandemic for the past 16 months. After this call with you, I'm going to go straight to the hospital and see my patients. And I can tell you that my physician colleagues across the province have been saying this very much loud and clear, not only during the pandemic, which has completely ramped up that level of burnout, but even before before the pandemic, there was significant levels of burnout in our profession. And, the plan by the ministry, and I think the announcement included numbers that suggested that 67,000 additional surgeries and procedures, as well as 135,000 more diagnostic imaging hours were going to be added in terms of capacity that you were asking about. But the fact is that we continue to have shortages of health human resources, and specifically we have shortages of specialist and family doctors right across this province, and the OMA and physicians have been advocating for an increasing expansion of our health human resource pool in order to be able to start dealing with what is now going to be a growing and an aging population that will increasingly need more healthcare services and moving forward. And so the question about, as you were describing, two ends of this equation, one is the infrastructure, and the second is the capacity to service that infrastructure with health human resources, doctors, nurses, other healthcare service providers. That is an evergreen issue that we have to deal with.
Okay. When you say shortage of specialists, does any certain type of practice come to mind for you, sir?
Well, I would say that physiatrists like myself are in very high demand. Our ability to manage complex chronic disease between the times of post-surgical care as well as pre-interventional surgical care, that is a specialty that is in great need of more specialists. We think about operating rooms and expanding the numbers of surgeons, diagnostic proceduralists, as well as other types of specialists like infectious disease doctors, public health experts, and as well as psychiatrists and pediatricians. Right across the province, we are seeing shortages, and this is a constant need of attention as we think about healthcare transformation for the future.
Doctor, thank you.
My pleasure. Take
care. For everything this morning. Very informative. Dr. Adam Kassam, President, Ontario Medical Association. Very insightful. Can you imagine it? 16 million procedures. 16 million procedures. A medical procedure, one for every person in the province. Man, woman, and child. Don Drummond just ahead. One of the top economists in the country. We'll talk about Canada's balance sheet. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
It was devastating, and it's devastating to all small business, but not knowing where it was going to go. But then the renovation market, as people stayed home, took off like wildfire. And for us, yes, we're very lucky, very fortunate that we were able to turn things around. I think a lot of it had to do with our internet presence as well, that I was, kept working on over years, and then it kind of took off. So that was very positive. But now, no, people are staying at home. We're renovating different markets, whether it's a kitchen or a backyard or your fireplace. They want to cozy things up. So yes, things are extremely busy right now. Right now it's fireplaces, and I think with the snowbirds, a lot of those clients have existing wood fireplaces, so they're looking at inserts. So they want to convert the wood to gas. They don't want to deal with the wood part of it, but they want it clean and easy and efficient, and that's been a major, major increase in our business. The cottage and chalet market has really increased, absolutely. We see that people, that's their staycation now, is either the backyard or their cottage with their close bubble of family. So there's no question that we've seen a big, big increase in that area as well. I've seen a change in the backyard because now the staycation, from my past being in the pool business, one of our great clients was in the other day, and he's in the pool business. He's booking for 2022. For in-ground pools, okay? So I think what's happened now is that's brought everybody back home, and I think maybe down the road, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're still gonna see people spending time in their backyards and staying home more. The barbecue area, really, we call it the backyard. So you walk out of your house into a backyard, and it kind of looks like that with the fencing and the sky and things like that. So that is just our fun room. It's just, there's a lot of cool gadgets there that has to do with dealing with charcoal and wood pellet barbecues. To go online, you're going to find, you just Google, romantic fireplaces will come up. The one nice thing about our work is that when the Google reviews and the Google pictures are phenomenal. We're uploading stuff every day. I have at least 1,000 jobs, real jobs that you can take a look at, either on the Google pictures on the drive, or if you go to our website at romanticfireplaces.com and click on Our Work. It's where we used to load lots of them up, but there's lots of pictures there too. But the great thing about that is they're real. There's testimonials there about people talking about our team. And our team here is unique to everybody else. It's two small teams, but these fellas work for me. They're our guys. So when they go into your home, they care as much about your house as you do.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
11:48, and it's a great pleasure to have back on our program this morning here on the Rob Snow Show. Don Drummond is the former chief economist of the Toronto Dominion Bank. He is a Stauffer Dunning Fellow, adjunct professor, School of Policy Studies at Queen's University. He is known as well as the chair of the Commission for the Reform of Ontario's Public Services. I've actually read that report and its 400 recommendations. It would have been nice if Premier McGuinty had actually instituted some of them. It's known as the Drummond Report, and he is with us now to talk about Canada's fiscal future, because there's a new report from the C.D. Howe Institute, where he is fellow in residence. Good morning, Don Drummond.
Good morning, Rob. I heard a rumor that someone had read the Commission's report. Now I know who it is.
Yeah, at least one.
My mind's at ease.
At least one. Yeah. Gosh, that was many years ago now.
Well,
many years
2012, so we're almost a decade ago.
Okay.
Still relevant today, though, amazingly enough.
I bet you it is.
Even more so, perhaps.
It seems it's migrated. These kinds of reports have migrated from Ontario to Newfoundland now.
Interesting. That's the last time we spoke, and remember, I did say that it's hard to see them getting this out of this on their own, and now, of course, we see the prospect of a major assistance from the federal government. And they're not the only government jurisdiction in trouble fiscally in Canada.
Well, I mean, $5 billion, only 500,000 people live in Newfoundland, so what is that, $10,000 per person?
It's a huge deal when you look at it for those 500,000, because they were facing the prospect of a doubling of their electricity prices, and boy, given all the other fiscal challenges, how do you absorb that?
Yeah, I guess the thing, and I don't want to get too sidetracked, but the thing with Muskrat Falls is what would be so beneficial to Newfoundland is to have a customer to buy the electricity.
Right.
That's what they really need.
Yep.
Right. So.
But unfortunately, it's such a high cost now.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the federal government is here. It's looking at a $350 billion budget deficit. Interest rates are low. The Bank of Canada doesn't seem overly concerned about inflation right now. It's kind of made it clear that it thinks it's quote unquote transitory. But nevertheless, you're concerned right now about what you're hearing about fiscal policy in Canada, and I want to know why.
Well, if you look at the most broad brush and characterize what's going on in the dialogue of 2021, it's sort of this time things will be different. That you can have highly stimulative monetary policy and it will all work out quite well, and you can just borrow seemingly to no limits of governments and that will all work out well. And of course, that's all predicated on a view interest rates will stay down. And of course, there are others that have perhaps been around the corner too many times on this kind of stuff, thinking to some degree history does tend to repeat itself, or at least there's a certain pull of mean reversion that if you create similar circumstances, you can fall back in the same problems. And of course, sitting here in 2021, who knows? The budget presented a very sanguine view of 2055, where the debt burden would finally come back to where it was in 2019. And I'm saying, yeah, let's hope for that. But you know what? Just slight changes to economic growth and interest rates, and instead of that debt burden be 30%, it could be 60%. And I'm talking about anything radically different, and I'm still not even talking about any crises we would come. And yet, we've never gone in 60 years, more than 10 years, without an economic, financial, or fiscal crisis. We now add health crises to that list, and does anybody think this is the one and only event, then some variant of that won't come back? And every single person in the world of science says that the natural disasters are going to come more frequently and be more constant. I mean, we're about the only place in the country that's right now not under a flood or a fire, and we're just seeing more and more of those. And should you not contemplating such potential as downside and protect against that?
Okay. How fair is it to say that some of the assumptions being made by the federal government right now may be overly optimistic?
Yeah, I keep telling everybody, if it had been as long, if you've been involved in forecasting as long as I do, you better become fairly humble about it, because almost all of our forecasts are wrong. That's the nature of the game, and I would never say that my assumptions are better or more accurate. I would say that there's always a risk spectrum to apply to everything. In my view, the assumptions made in the budget are on the optimistic side of a balanced risk spectrum. They could well be positive if everything works out very well. But I think that if you extrapolate historical trends, particularly the very modest productivity growth we've had in Canada for now 20 years, so that's kind of hard-baked. We don't seem to be able to get out of that. And put that together with the aging of the population and how that's going to slow labor force growth, I think the likelihood is economic growth is going to be quite a bit lower than the budget assumed.
Okay. What is being underestimated or maybe even ignored? Because it seems to me, there are some really big bills that are going to come due and recurring bills that are going to increase greatly. This was certainly a central theme in the report that you did for the Ontario government almost a decade ago. Healthcare. Long-term care, the cost for long-term care is set to triple. All the pension obligations. Are we really kind of underestimating the price tag that is to come for these big-ticket items?
Oh, I think absolutely, and I think the classic example is in the middle of your statement, long-term care. It is the ultimate paradox, because it is the most predictable problem imaginable. As soon as the beginning of the baby boomers were born, we knew we were facing this day. It just goes along as steady as could possibly, and yet the most predictable public policy program has attracted the least amount of action. We're between now and 2040 across Canada and in Ontario, we're going to see a doubling of the population 75 plus. That's the people that were born around 1950.
A doubling.
It's going to double. And yet we've got these little measly plans to increase a few beds here and a few beds there, not even remotely close to it. And of course, it defies the one piece of logic. Why don't we give people what they want? No one's sticking up their hand and asking to go to long-term care. They want to age in place. Why have we not built up a home care? Why have we not built up community? But shouldn't we have done that a long time ago and been thinking about this? This is no surprise that this is going to happen. And I guess the only explanation is it doesn't blow up, other than COVID caused it to blow up. It doesn't typically blow up on somebody's political watch. It's always outside that 2 or 3 years after the next election, so nobody pays attention to it. But we have the same thing. The other thing that really surprises me about social dialogue in 2021 is there's so little discussion of intergenerational fairness or unfairness. The next generation, I think, is going to require every single cent. We don't even have cents anymore. Every dollar of their resources to deal with climate change, not to correct it, because we've given them too bad a poison pill to correct it, to deal with it, to adapt to it, to try to mitigate it. And we're saying, take that, deal with that. But by the way, we're going to give you a huge debt burden related to our fiscal excesses as well. So you can work on the two of them. And I don't know why there's not more pushback against that.
Okay. Thank you, Don Drummond. Always a pleasure, sir.
Okay, you're welcome.
You again. Yeah. Adjunct Professor, School of Policy Studies, Queen's University, and fellow in residence, C.D. Howe Institute. Sam LaPrade Show next. Friday Free for All tomorrow. This is City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays 9 to noon on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.